I'm here joined by James. You probably have seen him. He's Mezzo on Discord. He won his local road to nationals with Iyslander. So I was feeling lazy and didn't want to figure out all these tips and tricks myself. So I went and recruited James to come do half of the work for me. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And so we each kind of took half, and then we're going to go through it. And I don't know what he has written down, and he doesn't know what I have written down. So
Yeah, that's the fun part.
we're both going to be learning from each other in this whole process. So I'm super excited. I know people have been asking for this. And like I said, I only had to do half the work. So yeah, let's dive right into it. The first hero we have on the list is Vi. Obviously, it's the boogeyman of the format right now. Even with the Stubbies ban, it's still going to be scary. So I believe you have some notes.
Yeah, so I think bringing up the Stubbies ban is interesting because I think it doesn't actually really change our matchup at all. They switch from Stubbies to Tiger Stripe Shuko, and over the course of the game, they probably squeeze just as much damage out of Shuko as they would have Stubbies.
Yeah.
Of being able to potentially block out Nourishing with momentum plus Shuko plus a card from hand.
Yeah.
So looking at the Vi matchup, we're clearly playing a tempo game plan into them. They can run Thaw if we were to try to play Hexes. So that's already a reason to dissuade off of Hexes, but we don't have time to set those up anyways. Because if you're not disrupting Vi constantly and ripping cards out of their hand or presenting damage, they're just going to run you over. Those Art of War turns are still just as deadly as pre-Stubby ban.
Yeah, 100%. I've actually, in my matchups with it recently, I've been playing too defensively, and I just bleed, and I'm not getting anything in. So, yeah.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Cards that don't just play too defensively. If we want to look at overperformers that I've experienced in the matchup, Aether Icebane is just an all-star here. Most Fis are, I believe they should be at least, playing AB1. So a yellow or red Icebane leaps 3 to 4 damage, and it rips a card out of their hand because they can't just tune it to pay the 2.
Right.
So it kind of accomplishes both your game plans at once, right? It significantly reduces their damage, and it pushes damage down into that. You need them at like around 10 life before you're really threatening to kill them on a given turn, assuming you still have Storm Striders.
Yeah. So what kind of cards are you looking to take out in this matchup? Like, what isn't great that you have in your deck list?
Yeah, so I think the single biggest card that should come out in this matchup is Energy Potion. It doesn't block, it doesn't disrupt. It's not very exciting.
Right.
Freezing Point also isn't fantastic because we're not establishing hexes. It's good to kill with a Sigil Permafrost, definitely, but it's hard to pitch stack the two. I don't think you're rarely, if ever, going to see the second cycle in this matchup.
Yeah, you're not making it back to your pitch, and Ice Bolt and Aether Ice Vein do the same thing if they don't have Frostbites or Hexes.
Absolutely. I'm very high on Red Ice Bolt in this matchup. It's a pretty consistent kill out of nowhere to Red Ice Bolt from hand. And it makes a Frostbite too.
Yeah, that's a really big one.
Yeah, that's something that surprises a lot of my opponents, is they think that the Frostbite's only made from blue cards from Arsenal, but it's any ice card that you play on their turn.
Right.
Another underperformer, it's still in the deck for sure against Vi, but I've kind of been low on Amulet of Ice recently just because it doesn't block.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of my turns that have been awkward because Amulet's stopping me from efficiently preserving life.
Right. Yeah, I felt the same way. The no blocks are scary.
Yeah.
Do you... I can't remember. Do you still have Nourishing in your list?
I do still have Nourishing. Okay. I do play it against Vi.
Okay. So I assume that means Command and Conquers come out for you?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd been messing with trying Command and Conquers over Nourishing, but I'm still on the fence about it.
Yeah, so Vi is very good with a 5-card hand, right?
Right.
Which is what CNC kind of turns off. But I think that if you're keeping a 2-card hand against Vi, using Coronet Peak and Arsling of Blue is probably just as effective as Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
And it lets you have that super high of Nourishing if you happen to line that up in a game.
Right. Let's see what other interesting cards on there. How is Oasis Respite felt in the matchup?
So Oasis is fine in this matchup. It's not one of the matchups where it's like an all-star in. And in fact, I've started cutting just one of my D-reacts one sync below in this matchup because I've noticed Fi doesn't have a ton of on-hits.
Yeah.
So Rising Resentment is a pretty big one. If it hits, you can give an attack +1 power.
Yeah.
No, that's the discount. Mounting Anger is the +1
Mounting
power.
Anger is the +1, yeah.
But outside of that, it's mostly just damage, and it's a lot of 3 powers. So Oasis is fine. The cost can definitely be a little clunky. It's definitely outshined by something like Sigil Permafrost, which threatens those frostbites and stops their turn.
Right.
I don't know. What have you been thinking about Oasis and Defy?
Oasis, it's the same thing. It felt weird. Like there aren't that many 4 and higher attacks, and then the one cost just makes it a little bit awkward. And if you take it out, you have more blues, which obviously we have the issue of occasionally running into too many reds. So it kind of felt like of the defensive cards, it was the weakest. But you kind of have the option compared with Sync of paying 1 resource to gain a life, which it depends on the hand. So I'm kind of on the fence about that. But I agree that a little bit of the defensive package needs to come out because you have to do something against Fi.
Speaking of having to do something against Fi, I have 2 more cards I want to get to as like all-stars in this matchup.
Sure.
Number 1 is Channel Lake Frigid. Get that card down and keep it out.
Yes.
It virtually gains you so much life.
100%.
On average, they're going to have like a blue a hand.
Yeah.
Also, Insidious Chill. This card it's better in OTK for sure because that like enables the OTK plan. But Insidious Chill paired with an Aether Ice Vein against Fi is just like backbreaking. It wins you games.
You take all the tempo back at that point.
Yes, and that's really important. It is worth taking damage to get an Insidious Chill out.
Okay.
I have written down here, you will be 10 to 20 life lower than your opponent at some point in the game. Don't panic. As long as you're building out those Insidious Chills and you know you've still got Ice Fangs left, you'll be able to take the tempo back, and you can definitely come back from that life deficit.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple other key cards I had noted. Hypothermia. That's one that gets discussed.
This is a big point of discussion. I think you're playing 1 in Defy right now. I'm playing 0.
Yeah, I think I'm cutting it back to 0 because Fis aren't running any. They're running like Tide Flippers as their conditional go again, and Emberblade.
Yeah.
And they're just not using Emberblade early enough in the turn to where Hypothermia is impactful enough.
Exactly. Yeah. Hypo shines when it's like shuts down that first attack. You can just keep a 4-card hand. But when they're 3 attacks in or 3 chain links in, and then they're swinging Emberblade, the Frostbite isn't relevant at that point, and the Hypo isn't relevant. So
also, the Emberblade is never their first attack, so it's not shutting the turn down early enough. Let's see, one other card. You have red. I think you still have 2 red Arctic Incarcerations in the list.
Yes.
That stays in Defy, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I actually really enjoy them in Defy. It's just a better Coronet peak.
Yeah.
But they are terrible when you draw 2 in the same hand because it's red and it blocks 2. That's why I'm only playing 2 copies.
Right. Because you never want to see 2.
The same hand are like 0.3%.
Yeah.
As opposed to like 1% of hands if you play all 3.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right. So let's kind of look at some of the like smaller interactions within the matchup. I know there's one off the top of my head. I'm sure it's going to be near the top of your list. Hit me with a tip or a trick in this matchup. Or something not to do. That's the one.
Okay. If they have 4 Draconic, make sure to give the Frostbite before the 4th Draconic Link.
Right.
If they make 4 Draconic Links and you give them a Frostbite, they say, cool, Fi ability. it's reduced by 4, increased by 1. It's still free, and it breaks the frostbite.
Yep. And on the exact same vein, there's another one. The Rising Resentment as Chainlink 1. I had it down as this is never do this, and then I did it yesterday. I didn't get punished, but because he didn't have anything to banish, but it was still, I did it, and it was bad. So the way that works is Rising Resentment says you can banish a attack action card with cost less than or equal to the number of chainlinks you control. So if it's their first chainlink, they can only banish at 0 cost. If you do it, you can play it this turn at 1 reduced cost. Normally, that doesn't do anything, but if you give them a frostbite and they banish at 0 cost, they can play it and clear the frostbite without paying. Yep. So if they start with Rising Resentment,
it applies before decrease, so it's still free.
Yeah. Yep. If they start with Rising, you either need to block it and give the frostbite, or if you're not blocking, don't give the frostbite there. Do it after the next chainlink. Yeah, I mean, I think the matchup is pretty straightforward if you follow that tempo game plan James is talking about.
And so talking about, let's talk about how you close that game, maybe.
Right.
Because this is where I think our lists differ a little bit. This is where blue ice bolt, becomes really important, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because if you can arsenal a blue bolt when they're around 10 life, blue ice bolt plus waning moon is 6 damage and a frostbite. Any arcane that you draw in a hand, if you still have striders up, if you haven't used them to take tempo at some point, means that they're just dead if you catch them without a blue in hand to AB1, AB1, AB1.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of merit to the Ice Bolt as far as having reach, and I think that's something I've undervalued in my list. I had one other question that I was about to ask there, and I don't remember what it was. So I guess we'll jump forward. As the Fi player, what interesting things do you think we have here?
Or I guess a couple of notes here. So
actually, let's every time we start talking about what the opponent needs to do, let's start with how many AB do you think Fi should be running?
Yeah, that was going to be my first point.
Yep.
I think it's correct for Fi to play Arcane Barrier 1, specifically Tide Flippers.
Tide Flippers.
That lets you pitch 1 blue to the opponent's Aether Ice Veins, so you AB 1, and then you pay 2. And you're going to take some damage, but it's like the most painless resource payment there.
It also gives you the option, if you get under a Frost Hex, to where you get a bunch of Frostbites and have to end your turn, you can just pitch spare cards into some of that Arcane Barrier.
Absolutely. With Stubbies drawn, I think they're playing Shuko. Yep. It's just 5 to 10 free damage over the course of a game, probably. It's kind of insane what that card does.
Yeah.
Fi's definitely should be playing Master Momentum, because it forces the Iyslander to interact. Iyslander can get kind of greedy sometimes in this matchup, wanting to keep like a fused Aether Ice Vein hand.
Yeah.
And Momentum can really punish that over its competition, Master the Pouncing Links. And then Tunic obviously helps breaks frostbites, can pay for a Wayward Coronet Peak.
Yeah, I think that's something we're going to have as a common theme, is that Tunic is very good into Iyslander, because Coronet Peak is one of our strongest tools.
Yeah. Now, that being said, my next tip for Fi actually is it's not always correct to pay for Coronet with Tunic.
Oh, 100%.
Sometimes saving that Tunic counter for like an Art of War turn is way better. Yeah. If your hand isn't especially great, you totally can just pitch a card.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that applies to any deck that's trying to play those 5-card hands into Iyslander. Saving that Tunic for when you have that 5-card hand will let you play it, obviously. Yep. Yeah, I think that's... Oh man, this is going to be a long video. That was the first hero. Yeah, but I mean, it's the most common one right now, right?
Yeah, it's definitely the most relevant matchup.
I'll use that as my excuse to why that's okay. But yeah, unless you had any closing notes on Fi, we'll go ahead and jump into the next hero.
Yeah, let's go. All
right. Next one we have on the list is Briar. And Briar is an interesting one. I've gotten to play the matchup a ton. As you might know, I know the viewers know, Sam Dando is someone I got into the game with, and I playtest with him all the time. And he's very, very good at Briar. So I've gotten a lot of practice there. He's come up with a lot of innovations for the matchup. We played at locals last night, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I've got like 9 of my sideboard cards come in against you." I'm like, "Man, that's not fair." He's like, "They're okay in other matchups too," but he's got a lot of stuff dedicated to the Iyslander matchup, and it's when I started, it was like I thought it was a bad match, or I thought it was a really good matchup, and it's gotten harder and harder, and it's like it's scary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I played this on the other side a lot before Iyslander came out. I was primarily playing Briar.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting to look at this from the flipped perspective.
Yeah. So I guess diving into what we kind of call the game plan into Briar, it's a little interesting because you're obviously still looking for that chip similar to Fi, but you also want to make sure that you have disruption available. Because when that Channel Lake Frigid comes down, you have to be able to throw like all your disruption to ruin their turn, or turns. And so,
Mount Heroic, you mean?
Yes. Did I say
okay.
Frigid?
Just double checking. You said Lake Frigid. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the card you want to see to match their channel.
Yeah, it's a counterplay, right?
Right.
For sure.
But no, when they play Mount Heroic. So similar to Fi, you obviously want the disruption, but I actually really like the Amulet of Ice still into Briar, just because you hit a Sigil of Permafrost or have an Ice Eternal in Arsenal when that channel Mount Heroic comes down. It gives you an opportunity to just destroy their hand and go, you're not doing anything here. Obviously, if they have multiple Earth cards, you're gonna have a bad time, but you're at least slowing it down pretty dramatically. And often they won't have the 2 Earth cards. So, yeah, I guess so it's going to be similar to Fi, to where you're playing for that chip, but you also need to have kind of like stocked up some disruption for when that Channel Mount Heroic comes down. And that's where you kind of have to force them to use their cards. So, let's see. Cards that are, or kind of how the sideboard looks. I guess I'll mention equipment. In most matchups, including Fi, we were on Tunic and Gauntlet. Into Briar, I'm actually bringing Metacarpus Node. There's an Explosive Growth Briar list that's been running around, and just having Node is going to make them shoot their Arcane at themselves, oftentimes. Or you can pay for it. But the Explosive Growth, every time it deals damage, is going to increase the attack of all your attacks for the turn, including the Thorn, which I may have had a Thorn come at me for 5 and 2 the other day. That was something. But yeah, so by having AB1, they have to shoot that at themselves. Often they're not even going to fire it at you in that case, but if you only had Striders, they'd go Bramble Spark, Explosive Growth, and you have to pay 4 to stop that.
Yeah, it's one of those necessary evil things, right? Because I think most players aren't on the Explosive Growth, but it's just, if they are and you don't have Metacarpus, it's very ugly.
Right. So it's kind of like, I'm going to lose 2 health across the game by not having that Gauntlet, but that's fine on the off chance. Obviously, if you play against them and you know that they're not on the Explosive Growth list, you can sideboard accordingly, which would just be bringing in the Ironhide Gauntlet instead. But if it's completely unknown, I think you have to bring in the Node.
Agreed.
Yeah, let's see. You prepared a lot better than I did. It's all in my head somewhere. Energy pots are coming out.
Yeah.
Again,
absolutely.
Outside of combo decks, we really aren't playing the energy pots. Matchups where we're comboing, we aren't really playing the energy pots.
Yep.
Different to Fi, obviously we're keeping the Amulet of Ice. Poppers come out. Command and Conquer doesn't do much. And actually, I'll note on Command and Conquer, Sam has been testing Crown of Seeds into the Iyslander matchup as an option of...
That is spicy.
One, Cold Snap doesn't do anything against him. He just crowns it away. And 2, it lets him draw into extra resources to continue playing his turn, if needed, to kind of play through Frostbites and Disruption. And it also lets him stop 1 one damage where he needs to, whether that's on like a Sigil of Permafrost into a Waning Moon. I didn't think it would be good, but he's been playing it, and it's felt really good to me. So he's like, it's only in there for Iyslander, and it's felt really, really good. So on that note, Command and Conquer is even worse into that matchup. But just the power of Nourishing, like we were talking before, I think is worth running Nourishing over Command and Conquer anyways. Freezing points are out. We've got... it's going to be a similar situation where Insidious Chill is a really important card in the matchup. Channel Lake Frigid. Hypothermia is really, really good into Briar. As opposed to Fi.
So this is very different from Fi, right? Yeah. Briar has almost no natural go again. I think it's just Ravenous Rabble.
Yep,
if my memory serves correctly.
Just Rabble.
So Hypothermia just shuts down everything they would do. And I think you have a trick with Hypothermia, right?
Oh, yeah.
Resolution step.
Yeah, so a big one, I mean, this should be a case with Hypothermia and oftentimes Blizzard. Will just be after the attack has already hit, damage has been calculated, you wait until resolution step to stop the go again. Into a lot of decks that aren't running reactions, it's not as important, but into Briar, they often have the lightning presses that they might save for a later attack, and all of a sudden they're stuck with that lightning press that they can't play anymore. So waiting until resolution step is pretty important into a variety of matchups. Blizzard would be a similar case, but sometimes you want to cast that to see if they can pay before you figure out your blocks.
Another card that's different to Fi for my sideboarding is I don't like Red Incarceration against Briar.
Yeah.
Because their deck is full of these Earth Blues that are just to play Channel Mount Heroic. And so if they're not doing that this turn, and you use Red Incarceration, they just kind of pitch away that Earth Blue and then play their turn like they were going to anyways. Yeah. It just doesn't seem as impactful as against most other aggro decks. Right.
I know I've talked with Sam in the past about Channel Lake Frigid, and while it's still very frustrating for Briar, it's still really, really good into her, he'll say, sometimes I just have that spare Earth Blue, and they play Channel Lake Frigid, and I pitch my Earth and play 0 cost, 0 cost, 0 cost, and it's fine. Like, yep. It doesn't actually hurt as bad as it does a lot of the other aggro decks. However, they don't have resources to pitch for Arcane Barrier or Permafrost, so you still want to keep your channels around against them. But just be aware that a lot of Briar hands will be able to push through Channel Lake Frigid pretty effectively. I feel like I'm probably missing one of those steps you had. What were your steps for going through the matchups? Because I want to get to tips and tricks, but I feel like I missed something.
Underperformers, which I think we were just talking about.
Yeah, we were basically talking about that. Channel Lake Frigid is very good, but it's not as crazy as in the other matchups. Yep. Something I've been kind of realizing more into non-Draconic Heroes is an early Frost Hex, even into these tempo matchups, adds up to a lot of damage across the game, and also translates to a lot of reach at the end of the game. Just play an early Frost Hex, and all of a sudden I can kill them from 17 instead of 10. And that's a lot more. So, it's a little more risky into the Draconic Heroes if they happen to play Thaw, but if you can get one of these down on one of Briar's slower turns, it's going to translate to a lot of damage across the game. So I've just been surprised by that. It's not really an underperformer or an overperformer. It's just kind of a surprise for me recently.
No, you're totally right. I think I found my favorite turn 0 opening hand in the game, which is Amulet of Ice.
Oh no!
Arsenal Frigid.
Oh
and it's
no!
Just brutal.
Yeah, that is the start. I've also been really liking Ice Eternal. I didn't cast it as much before, but just being able to go, your turn's over. I lost my turn too, but that's fine. Ice Eternal has been quite good.
Very relevant for the Channel Mount Heroic, right?
Absolutely. Just go. I mean, I guess if they have 2 blues in hand, great. But we should be proccing chills and amulets as well. So, it kind of just is a reset on the turns. I I don't know that there's too many under and overs. I mean, Aether Ice Vein, I want to say it's an overperformer, but it overperforms in like every matchup. So
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. It's just really good.
There's one matchup it doesn't overperform into. We'll talk about that later.
All right. And then, if you're playing Briar, don't play Exude, please. I'm asking you kindly. Stop playing Exude.
That's the tip for the Briar player, right? Is just play Exude Confidence.
No, don't tell him.
Watch the Iyslander cry.
I actually
Like
cut
the mic for a turn.
I cut Fate Foreseen out of my deck because of Sam playing Exude too many times into me.
Yep. I agree with that choice for what it's worth. I haven't been on Fate Foreseen for a while.
Yeah, but Exude, interestingly enough, Exude does not stop you from playing blue ice cards from your arsenal as though they were instants, because they still aren't instants. But your moon and everything, you can't do any of that.
Yeah. Turning off moon is pretty sad.
Yeah, but at least I can play something out of arsenal. Yeah, I don't know. It's Hypothermia and Channel Lake Frigid, and disrupt the Channel Lake Frigid turn, or the Channel Mount Heroic turns. I swear, I'll never get those right.
Channels are...
Yeah, channel. It is what it is. I'm trying to think if I have any notable cards. Nothing really else. Coronet Peak is... It performs well in most matchups, but obviously, again, in the Briar matchup, just if they play like down their Channel Mount Heroic, we got that one right. Just being able to start them off down one card going into their Channel Mount Heroic turn is huge. And even on non-Channel Mount Heroic turns, stopping Briar from going wide is good. It can mess with their ability to Thorn quite often. That combined with like the Frostbite on your turn.
Yeah.
The notable interaction that I think is most talked about in this matchup is the Embodiment of Earth. I love it.
Yes. Yep.
So the Embodiment of Earth...
Start of action phase trigger.
Yep, it's a start of action phase trigger. So when their Embodiment of Earth breaks at the start of their turn, you get a window to play stuff. So make sure that your Briar opponents are remembering their Embodiment of Earths. And take your window.
It's a really funny judge interaction, right? Because it's normally like a beneficial trigger, and suddenly you can argue it's a detrimental trigger.
Right. It's funny playing against Sam, as he's been helping me practice that, where he will ignore it quite frequently. So because it's on me to remember it in this matchup, so I have to tell him every time, take your embodiment, take your embodiment. Which it's good, because I need to be paying attention to that. You can't just trust your opponent to do it, because if they miss it, you get hurt. And so I guess that interaction there ties into another kind of tip and trick in the matchup is if they're coming in with like a vanilla 6, and like you could block 6, you could also just throw like a sink below, take 2, and know that you get an extra priority window, especially if you've got like a Channel Lake Frigid. Making sure that they hit you for 1 or 2 damage is going to give you an extra tax on their next turn by being able to play the Channel Lake Frigid a little bit earlier. So being able to use that embodiment to your benefit is really, really important in the matchup. Yeah.
So I think if we're trying to give the Briar players advice, there's something we missed, which is how much Arcane Barrier should they be playing?
I think it's 1 for most decks.
Yeah.
You can run the Crown of Seeds in addition. I think Sam is playing Milrune Gloves and Snapdragons and Crown of Seeds right now. And as I think we'll say for most of these matchups, Tunic should be what you're playing in the body.
Yep, I agree. If, as a Briar player, you are playing Grasp into Iyslander, I'm going to recommend you don't pitch to Grasp very often.
Oh, definitely not.
So it's a really common play cycle in Briar of pitching to Grasp and then swinging Rosetta, right?
Right.
Because a blue cleanly pays for that. That's just asking for trouble, because Iyslander can give you a Frostbite, and then that resource doesn't swing Rosetta anymore.
Exactly. Sorry, I misspoke a moment ago. Sam is playing Vexing Quillhand. Milrune Gloves would be bad. It's the gloves that have the 1 AB. Yeah, they do the thing. Although actually, funnily enough, think it was someone else. They had that as their AB, and they were trying to push for the kill, and they just go pop the gloves. I'm like, oh, you don't have AB left, and then I killed them.
Yeah. It makes wizard math very easy when you can't prevent our damage.
I think they were on 8, and they got rid of their last arcane barrier, and I was like, oh, that's a Strider's Ice Bolt into Moon. So just be careful with that. But it is, at the end of the game, it is an opportunity for 2 extra damage if you really need to push for it. Yeah, I think that's the Briar matchup. Oh man, this video is going to be way long.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Maybe this is a 2-parter. We'll see.
Oh, no.
No. All right. Well,
we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. We'll just try to pick up the pace a little bit. Yes.
Yeah. Next here, moving away from the tempo plan for a bit, is Bravo Showstopper. Star of the show, obviously, has been Living Legend did. This is the first OTK game plan that we're going to talk about as far as heroes go. So instead of chipping damage and kind of trading life as the game goes on, we want to be conserving damage. We will be setting up our important combo pieces, which are Frost Hex, number 1. It doesn't work without Frost Hex. Insidious Chills, Amulets of Ice, Energy Potions. These are all cards that supplement that OTK. While we're getting those cards out, we want to be pitch stacking Ice Eternals with following hands of 4 blues, one of which is an ice card. Or we want to be pitching Sigils of Permafrost and big arcane spells like Freezing Point next to each other in that second cycle.
Yeah.
And then maybe not necessarily all in one turn, but across 1 to 2 to 3 turns, we want to be dealing huge bursts of 20, 30 damage to our opponent with these combos using Frost Hex to overcome the majority of blues in our opponent's deck, which normally would let them very efficiently pitch to Arcane Barrier to stop our damage.
Right.
I think...
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. So I think looking at the Bravo matchup, there's 2 cards that really stand out to me as overperformers. Beyond beyond the normal combo pieces.
Yeah.
Almost dropped my
You're good.
Those 2 cards are Coronet Peak, because it really makes it difficult for Bravo to pummel, and Oasis Respite, because this is really our only card that gets around Bravo's Dominate really easily. We don't really enjoy arsenaling D-Reacts. You can do it, but it's not ideal. So without Oasis, there's not a lot of options to get around any dominated attacks that he throws at us. I found Macho Grande to be a big pain in this matchup, personally.
Yeah.
And Coronet beats Peak either stripping a red attack or a pummel or a blue, like anything that it takes from them, because most Bravos are going to be playing Tectonic Plating.
Yeah.
Just significantly reduces the threat of their next turn.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I was gonna add one other thing, or I guess it'll be on that D-React thing. I actually find myself quite liking to put D-Reacts in Arsenal in that matchup. Like if I have the opportunity, because it kind of just says I'm not taking damage on my next turn, and that's it digs me 4 more cards, and I know I'm not taking damage, or it's very minimal. I'm not as worried about because playing blues at Arsenal, giving him a Frostbite, doesn't really slow Bravo down very much.
I found the Arsenal Frostbite pretty relevant to stop a pummel by 1 resource. If they play a 4-cost attack, 2 floating and 1 card left, a Frostbite means that if that is a pummel, it's not coming at you this turn.
Right.
But I can see the argument to be arsenaling D-Reacts.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think Bravos are also assuming that they have to play around a Frostbite. So on that turn, they're going to try and set it up so they have 3 available for a pummel or a spare blue. So they're kind of under that assumption that if I want to pummel, I need 1 extra resource. And then by surprising them and going, nope, you don't, and I just have the D-React, it's felt really good. And again, it's not something that I'm just going to hold a D-React to put in Arsenal. But if I get in a situation where I've got a D-React and a blue, or I'll block leaving a D-React and a blue, I'm perfectly fine pitching the blue for Peak, Arsenal the D-React, and go, I get to see my next 4 cards for free, and I'm not taking any damage.
Yeah.
Go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So as far as underperformers in this match, I've been finding that the cards, I call them tenderizers. So these are the tall red arcane in the first cycle.
Yeah.
Red Aether Hail, red Ice Bolt. I've really been underimpressed with them, or not very impressed. We deal so much damage with the combo
Yeah.
that taking damage to throw a red Ice Bolt at Bravo is just it doesn't do much.
Yeah.
It's just throwing life away, really. That could be the difference between winning or losing on a dominated attack late in the game.
Yeah, I'm actually inclined to agree. I hadn't kind of processed that, but I definitely feel that as you're as you're saying it. Like, it's actually been interesting in a lot of my Bravo matchups. They've been understanding that they have to race me. They're on a timer, and so I'm often finding that they're just taking every time I Waning Moon, they're just like taking it, or anytime I play those spells, and it'll get to the point where it's like I'm at, I don't know, 10 to their 25, and I've got 2 hexes down, and I'm like, 2 is enough at this point.
Well,
like,
yeah.
Like
if there's 32 is definitely enough.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like they were getting value, but I don't actually know, because I'm casting them and I'm getting damage in, and then all of a sudden my clock to kill them has moved up like 4 turns just because they took 12 in chip. And it's like, okay, well, so I don't know. It's weird, and I'm not sure what the correct answer is there. Oftentimes there's still just 3 blocks, which we love 3 blocks in this matchup.
Absolutely.
So
3 blocks are your bread and butter here.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something that makes it into the sideboard ever, or if we just note that I'm not taking damage to play it unless it's like dominated, and I'm just gonna have spare cards, and that's when I'll play it. But yeah, I think what you said is correct. Don't take extra damage just to cast them.
Yeah, for sure. Tips for Iyslander as you play this matchup.
Yeah.
Number 1, conserve life. I feel like the most times that I lose this matchup, it's looking at a dominated attack that is like 1 or 2 damage more than I can block and kill them on that turn.
Yeah.
So conserving life early is super important.
Yeah.
Aggressively keep them off the pummel, primarily through Coronet Peak, but through a tricky Frostbite if you can. The Bravo's going to try to work around that as we already discussed.
Yeah. Which is actually another fun one where Winter's Bite and Arctic Incarceration can really throw them off if they're planning on only needing 1 extra resource.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Those are the 2 resource tax from Arsenal are strangely good in this matchup. Arctic Incarceration, especially because if you have 3 X's out, it's a 0 for 6 arcane.
Yeah.
Which will happen in this matchup. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I've actually been doing that a lot more than I thought I would. As of recent, it'll be like they just play out their hand, and I'm just like, Arctic Incarceration 0 for 4, because it'll be like 2 hexes, and they're like, I guess I'll take 4 and be way closer to dying. Within that context, like 25 to 21 is way closer.
Like the Briar matchup, you can respond to Seismic Surges popping at start of action phase.
Yeah.
Conversely, for the Bravo, be very careful about making Seismic Surges because your opponent can respond to them.
So it's interesting. I don't find myself responding to the Seismic Surge too often outside of with Cold Snap. Because it, especially once they have 2 or 3 Frost Hexes, letting them attack and then making the Frostbite, that will translate to 3 damage on the Frost Hexes, or they'd have to pay 3 resources at the end to conserve their health into the Frostbite damage, as opposed to just paying 1 early on. So especially if they've started to dwindle a little bit, they're at the 28, 27, you go, okay, if I just play it after and they don't have a way to clear it, they now are getting taxed 3 by this, essentially, if they're trying to keep their health up. I don't know if that's correct, but that's kind of just what I've been doing. So barring Cold Snap, I just haven't been responding to surges too often.
Yeah, it's pretty good with a Blue Aether Ice Vein. I'm not playing that card right now, but it's like cards number 81 through 83.
Yeah.
But you're right. Cold Snap primarily is the interaction there that you're looking for with the size mix.
Yeah.
And then my last piece of advice for Iyslander here: if you can't disrupt them enough such that they're still threatening to pummel on an attack, and you have a Frost Hex in hand, do not go down to one card in hand. Because if they have the pummel and you discard that Frost Hex, it's brutal.
Yeah, your game plan gets a lot harder at that point.
Yeah.
I think I had a similar situation today where I was looking at my hand and it's like I need to play this combination out, and I'm like, I'm just going to take extra damage. If they have the pummel, I'm okay, but I don't lose the game off of a pummel here. And they did have the pummel. And I took a bunch of damage, but I kept my Frost Hex and ended up coming back and winning.
Yeah, I think that's the one opportunity where it's okay to let some life go, is just like protect that Hex for real.
Yeah. Really quick, what are the cards we're boarding out in this matchup? I feel like I missed that if you mentioned it.
I didn't. So Blizzard Hypothermia. There's little go again in Bravo. It's, Rouse the Ancients, Celis Belting. And a lot of times they'll have the blue, and they just get to swing a Nothos after.
Yeah.
Command and Conquer is fine. It's primarily going to be a 3-block. It can delay a pummel for a turn, but I'm not super high on it because it doesn't contribute to the combo game plan. So personally, I'm citing it out.
As am I.
I don't like Red Incarceration here because it lets them a Nothos for 6 even easier.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
2 blue 3 costs to a Nothos.
Yeah.
And then my last cuts here are 2 red Aether Hail. Just because, like I said, I'm pretty low on Tenderizers. It's not as tall. Red Ice Bolt is better to pair with a Sigil of Permafrost late game if you need to, if you can't find a freezing point.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, mine's slightly different.
Just disrupts well.
Yeah. Mine is, I've got extra poppers in my list, so those are what come out for me. Yeah. But basically the same thing. We're running a very, very similar 60 in that matchup. Yeah, okay, let's jump into tricks for Bravo, I think.
Yeah. So Bravo, you are the aggressor here.
Yes.
You want to be pummeling, you want to be dominating when it is safe.
Right.
Don't let the Iyslander give you 1 frostbite in response to your Bravo activation, and then you can't do anything.
Yeah, that's yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, really quick on being the aggressor. This is like my favorite story about this matchup. Was early on testing with Sam. I handed him Iyslander. It's like his second game on the deck, and I'm like, I'm gonna try from the Bravo side. Can I just fatigue the matchup? Just only hammer, whatever. We get around. He's got like 2 Insidious Chills, 3 Frost Hexes down, E-Pots, everything, and I'm on 38. I'm like, this is fine. And I like Anathos for 6, and he like pops E-Pots and Tunics, double Sigil, strips my entire hand, freezing point. I'm able to block 2, so it hits for 6, makes 12 Frostbites, deals 36 plus a Moon. I was like, okay, I took 45, so no, fatiguing Iyslander if they know what their game plan is not an option.
Yeah. I think the max, like a perfect OTK turn, is 83, but it involves a triple Sigil of Permafrost
with E-Pots. Yeah.
Point. Yeah, it takes all 3 E-Pots. You'll never actually do it in a game.
Yeah. That's disgusting.
Yeah. The other tip for Bravo here, I have seen a surprising number of Bravos play Titan's Fist plus Arcane Lantern into Iyslander.
No.
Definitely play Anothos, or even better, Sledge of Anvilheim.
Do you think Sledge is better?
I think Sledge is probably better.
Interesting.
It's just, pitch 2 blues, you get to Sledge for 6 automatically. You're floating 2 for a pummel, so you have to make them have the frostbite.
Interesting. Do you think it's?
Anothos is fine for sure. Yeah. Like Anothos is very good as well.
So, I'd mentioned it a little bit prior to it. Talking with some other people, we've been discussing whether or not Tunic is an option for Bravo in the matchup. I've only gotten to test a couple games, and it felt pretty good. But like we mentioned, Coronet Peak is so important at stopping you from pummeling. If you have that Tunic available to say, no, I'm going to pummel anyways, on one of those turns, it can give you a lot of momentum. And I think if you're on Tunic, you don't have that option of making a surge into Anathos for 6. So Sledge might actually be correct in that matchup. Or sorry, paired with Tunic.
I have yet to see a Bravo play a Tunic in the wild against Iyslander, just because I think their list space is pretty tight. But
Yeah.
it's very good, I'm sure, if they can justify the space for it.
Yeah, which I'm like 17 games deep testing with my friend, and he's like, I'm playing Tunic. So,
Sure.
yeah. But yeah, Sledge is interesting, because then all of a sudden that becomes 2 spaces that they have to find for the matchup. And I don't...
I'm no Guardian player, but it's what one of my local testing partners is very high on, is Sledge.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's about it for tips and tricks. I was gonna say we're speeding up. We're not speeding up that much.
Well, we should probably move on then.
Yeah. Oh boy, this is gonna be forever. How long do you have?
I've got all night.
Oh, sweet, me too. All right, you ready for this 4-hour video?
It's at night.
What's that?
Spoiler alert for the viewers, we're recording this at night.
Yeah.
You can watch the lighting change as the sun sets.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see the same for mine. All right, so I've got next on my list is Dromai. This is it's a weird matchup. Obviously on paper it's an illusionist, so you go, we're just gonna have a bad time into illusionist. Spoiler for people who don't know Iyslander's matchups, Prism we've got down at the bottom, and that's kind of gonna get glossed over. It's bad. Dromai, however, actually it's not as bad. I'm still trying to gauge exactly how bad it is. I've had a reasonable success rate in testing. Reasonable being, I'm almost 50-50, I think. I don't think that actually is the matchup. I think it's definitely unfavored, but just people who didn't have as much experience in the matchup.
I think I'm closer to 30-70.
Yeah. But it's better than Prism.
It is much better than Prism.
So diving into that game, it's kind of awkward for us, because similar to what we do to the Bravos and the Oldhims, is Dromai makes us be the aggressor in the matchup. It's very, very hard to take a slow game, because we can't kill their dragons as fast as they make their dragons. So we need the game to end, and with all the defensive tools we have and all the disruption, we aren't really very well equipped to do that. However, like 50 cards in their deck are 1-blocks, which is kind of our saving grace in the matchup.
Yeah, turns out a hero based around red cards can't pitch to Arcane Barrier effectively.
Right. I know I've seen people go, oh, they have seven Ashwings, they have Arcane Barrier 7. I'm like, yeah, but they have 4 resources in their hand. So, yeah, so most of it, the matchup is going to be played about as aggressively as we can. You're using
Absolutely.
especially early on, you're using your health total as a resource to make sure that we can lower both players, because we want to get them in that range to go for a Strider's kill, which is typically going to be 10 to 12, maybe a little bit lower. 7 to 10 would be ideal.
I think you maxed out at 11 with Blue Ice Bolt, Red Ice Bolt, Waning Moon.
Yeah. And obviously there's assumptions on cards in hand and resources and all that good stuff. But yeah, you're just really looking to push that damage. So don't be afraid on those early turns to take a little bit of damage, or even a decent chunk of damage, just to get those Red Ice Bolts, those freezing points, those Aether Ice Veins, even the Aether Hails casted, just to kind of get that chip damage in. So yeah, the reason, I think at the core, the reason it's a bad matchup is because we're pushed onto a game plan that we're not very well equipped to do. Okay, so continuing from there, we'll talk about kind of some of the key cards. I'm running 7 poppers. I talked myself down to 4 for a minute, and then I went back to 7 because I'm scared.
Yeah.
I know you're on 4.
4, yeah. I've just found that I really don't like drawing 2 poppers in the same hand because it
Yeah.
really lowers what your damage output can be.
Yeah.
And racing is so important. But I think you've been experiencing more success than me, so that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
As you, the viewer, are deck building.
Yeah. So even if there's actually been times when you have 2 poppers and they play a Dromai, and then you just laugh because you get to kill 2 dragons.
Yeah.
Because Dromai is, well, there's a list of them that are a problem. Obviously, Kailoria is a problem. Dromai is a problem. Thamai is a big problem.
Obviously Thamai, but Dromai is sneakily one of their best dragons, if not their best dragon in the matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like just behind Thamai, but it's also way easier for them to play. So, yeah, I think I'm liking 7 poppers. And interestingly, Yellow Fighting Spirit has been huge. I think I had a game yesterday where I got down to like 2, and I had popped 2 dragons with Fighting Spirit and healed off of both of them. So that health really mattered because, like I said, I'm not blocking much. I'm just trying to race. So I'm usually lower. So yeah, those are kind of key cards. Things that I take out almost all of my defense reactions.
Absolutely.
Definitely the Sink Blows, definitely the Oasis Respites. There's some discussion on the Sigil of Permafrosts, just because they give you an opportunity to kind of end the turn. I think I like blues if I'm going to play one.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I'm definitely taking out my reds. I like taking out all of my D-Reacts, because if they do have the Thamai, bricking a hand with just a card that you have to pitch for 1 resource will lose you the game. But Blue Sigil is still a blue, right? So it's much less punishing there.
And if you're going for the Frostbites to disrupt, Blue Sigil is stopping most of the damage on those dragons oftentimes, because they're coming in 2, 3, sometimes 4, but...
Yep. And then the last card Ikrat is Energy Potion. It's just...
Too slow.
Fast.
Too slow. It translates to a bigger turn down the line, but we're looking for as much damage turn over turn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that looks about right for... Yeah, that's what I'm cutting as well. So does that mean you keep the red incarcerations in?
I do, kind of out of just necessity of citing out other cards.
Right.
But, I mean, if Dromai is going to draw a non-zero number of quad red hands. And so if you have a red incarceration on one of those turns, it's...
Their turn's over. Or basically over, yeah.
Turn ending, yeah. I think it's not an exaggeration.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty good. Another interest... Oh, I guess we'll jump on equipment, because I'm still torn between Gauntlet and Node.
Oh, I'm fully on the Node train.
All right, I'm probably going to end up trusting you. I played it yesterday and then didn't actually need it for any of my things. But just because I didn't need it doesn't mean that it's valuable, or that it wasn't valuable. Also, I think I paid for some Azvali Arcane with it, so that was nice.
It stops Wayward Azvali and Burn Them All Arcane. I've been seeing more and more Burn Them Alls appearing in Dromai lists, and it's surprisingly good.
I think Burn Them All is like one of the best cards in the deck. Less so in this matchup because they're pitching.
Too loudly.
Yeah, less so in this matchup because they're pitching and not blocking. But in those other long matchups, I've seen it get up to like 7 counters. So each one's just 7 arcane. That's really annoying to deal with.
But yeah, Metacarpus essentially being +2 arcane damage on the kill turn is. I mean, that's what Kano was playing it for, right?
Yeah. Interesting. So the thought process I had for it was that it was helping you hit breakpoints when trying to kill dragons that you needed to kill.
So that's the big red emergency. I have to kill this button, this dragon, or else I die button.
Yeah,
but it's not my preferred use for it.
Okay,
I think it's primarily a racing tool, and it's secondarily this kills heavens forbid a Dracana Optimi.
Yeah.
So with a red ice bolt.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think I've gotten to any games where I've been 1 or 2 short yet.
Yeah, it's happened for me a couple of times.
But just having that extra damage available.
It's road to nationals, actually.
Awesome. All All right, let's see. What other card? I think we... It's weird because I've got the list on screen, but since I added extra cards after boarding, we end up at 76? No, 66 in the main, I think, or something like that. It looks kind of weird, but it is what it is. Yeah. It's interesting. So you've got Hypothermia and Channel Lake Frigid are super powerful into Dromai. It's awkward, though, when you draw them early. I've been finding, like, you draw Hypothermia early and they don't have any dragons, and it's like, I don't want to pitch it because it's so powerful, but, like, I can't hold it for 4 turns. So, obviously, you have to pitch it.
I think Hypothermia, and this is also relevant in the Katsu matchup, which we'll talk about later, I think it's perfectly fine to just arsenal it and sit on it for a few turns.
Yeah.
Channel Lake is a different story because it's going to be so expensive when you do play it, but I actually, especially in this racing matchup, think that arsenaling a Hypo and just waiting until it's good can be a valid strategy.
Yeah, I can see it. Especially if you've got like a popper. You just kind of have like that safety net for when you aren't able to stop their turn. Let's see. I feel like I had something I was going to say. I'm really bad at this apparently.
Secret MVP?
Oh, secret MVP.
If your opponent has Aether Ashwings, Blue Frosting is just like your best friend.
Oh, yeah. Blue Frosting is amazing. Because they'll be like, oh, I want to attack with the Ashwings first so that my big dragons don't get popped. And then their turn ends. And it's great.
And then their turn is over. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, one of the more important cards in the matchup on that same note is Blue Aether Hail.
Yep.
As something that can kill Kyloria and Chromai. Obviously, it doesn't stop the turn on Chromai, but it answers Chromai, because you need to kill it at some point.
The Frostbite mates can stop the turn after killing Chromai, which is often relevant.
Yeah. So Blue Aether Hail and Blue Frosting are kind of hidden MVPs in the deck, or in the matchup.
Absolutely.
What else? I guess we could talk like tips and tricks. One that I get rather frustrated. Well, whenever I play against Dromais, I tell them this when it happens. But let's just say they've pitched a red to like play a Kyloria, and they go attack with Kyloria, and I go Blizzard. So it puts Blizzard on the stack, and then the Frostbite trigger on the stack. So they're able to choose to just resolve the Frostbite, and then pitch 2 more reds to Furnace to get 3 resources, and then they only have to spend 2 on the Blizzard. So choosing to resolve part of the stack kind of lets them generate extra resources, which is very frustrating to play against oftentimes. But it's a very powerful interaction that they can do.
So that is definitely a powerful interaction. I don't know about the Dromais you're playing against. My local Dromais have been moving away from Furnace and moving towards Tunic.
Interesting.
Not specifically for the Iyslander match, just in general.
That is really interesting. I have not played against a Dromai that wasn't playing Furnace, and I feel like they get so much value out of it.
Furnace is incredible, specifically against Iyslander.
Yeah, which is interesting because we've been telling people in most heroes want to just play Tunic into us, but I think you want Furnace as Dromai.
Another thing that Furnace does in this matchup, coincidentally, is when you have that turn 0 Nourishing Emptiness, they have Crown of Providence and Furnace, it's not going to hit.
Yeah.
But Nourishing also is primarily a popper in this matchup, so you're not losing a ton of value there. Yeah.
Yeah, if they start out and I see Furnace and Crown of Providence, I don't know if I'm playing Nourishing on turn 0. Like, it's not hitting, and I want a popper in my hand for their first dragon.
Yeah, it just kind of disincentivizes you to ever play it to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other notable things? Just hit them in the face. They don't have a lot of pitch.
You just hit them in the face. Yeah.
And I guess if assuming they are on Furnace, a lot of your damage, obviously your reds already do more damage, but focusing on doing the damage on your turn is really big because they can't use Furnace to generate extra resources. So like a moon on your own turn is almost better, or like comparable, if not better, than a moon on their turn sometimes, depending on how many reds they've already pitched, because they'll have the opportunity to like pay into Arcane Barrier on something, and then pitch remaining reds for Furnace, get extra resources, and then Arcane Barrier that entire moon with like 1 red. So being able to play it on your turn is surprisingly powerful in that matchup. Yeah, I think that's about it. I will be getting more testing into Dromai in the very near future, and I'm a little nervous, but it should be good. All right. I keep looking at the timer, or the timer on the recording, and going, wow, we went through that one fast. We didn't go through that one fast.
We were faster.
It was maybe a little bit, but we're an hour in, and we're 4 heroes in. So
it's all good. It's all good.
It's fine. Yeah, there's definitely going to have to be timestamps on this for people who don't want to watch it all.
The next hero, the other Runeblade of the format,
yes.
VIserai. So I think this is a tempo game plan. I've seen some people prioritize Frost Hexes, which is interesting. There are some aggro matchups where I like Hexes. I don't think VIserai is one of them. Particularly because we have a massive overperformer here in the form of Alluvian Constellus, which makes our chip damage just literally free.
Yeah, this card's insane.
Yeah. Yep.
So, sorry, really quick on, you said it's a tempo game plan. It's interesting because Constellus is obviously a once per turn trigger, and it roughly translates to your 1 resource will turn into a roughly 2.5 damage swing by preventing 1 and dealing 1.5 later. So since that's a once per turn thing, wouldn't we be looking for kind of a slower game plan to where we get to use the Constellus more often and generate that like 1.5 health additional every turn?
So you definitely can. I think that if you give VIserai too much time, they can build a lot of rune chants faster than you can kind of attrition them out of the game.
Okay.
And if you've ever seen a Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath for free, it's
no, don't say that, please.
Fun. It's not a fun turn.
We gotta keep this PG. Don't say such terrible things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. So there's definitely, it's not as fast of a tempo game as you're playing into someone like Fi.
Right.
Especially because VIserai is very resilient to disruption, much more so than Fi. This deck has so many random blues.
Oh yeah. Okay, but yeah, we'll go with roughly a tempo plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously Constellus, and then we're playing Ironhead Gauntlet because we don't need the AB1 on node.
Correct. Yep. Because Constellus that's the whole point of Constellus.
Right. So I guess, yeah. Sorry, you were talking about what the game plan was, and I kind of interrupted.
Yeah. No, you're good.
So, what else did you have on there?
I think as far as underperformers go, these may be super controversial.
I have a couple that I think might be. I might agree with you.
I'm not a big fan of Nourishing in this matchup because they oftentimes have enough armor to block it out, kind of like Dromai. I'm also not the biggest fan of Sigil Permafrost in this matchup, which might be heresy.
I think I might be inclined to agree.
Okay,
so,
I'm glad.
Well, it's interesting because I'm not sure I agree on the Nourishing. Although I guess it depends on what AB they're playing. But I've noticed that playing Constellus reminds me how much I like my Tunic counter. And so a lot of these play patterns that we're expecting to have Tunic, we can't do. So something like Sigil of Permafrost, if you didn't have something set up properly, it's fine. You use your Tunic, you get the 0 for 4, and it's fine. All of a sudden, when you don't have Tunic, it feels a little bit worse. Obviously, you can block Arcane as well, which isn't with the floating resources, and that's not as bad. But like...
Not with yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, with the Sigil, that works reasonably well. With Red Sigil, it's rough.
Yeah. One that I felt was kind of an underperformer was Red Aether Hail in this matchup. Because a lot of times I get into a situation where I just Tunic Red Aether Hail and Arsenal the remaining blue just kind of as a chip damage, and that's not a line. So I'd get stuck with a blue and an Aether Hail, and I don't want to Arsenal the Aether Hail. And I can't play it with a Tunic resource, and I want an Arsenal, so it felt a little bit more awkward last night. Additionally, some of these big turns that Viserai is doing is a ton of arcane. So those red 3 blocks don't block 3 all of a sudden. So that gets a little bit concerning.
Very real.
So, yeah, and Sigil of Permafrost is the same way, where it's like, they go Mauve Skies. I guess they'll probably come in for 4 at least, but it still just feels awkward. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. The Mavrian Strides, I think, is another, or the Rainbow Mavrian Strides, I should clarify, is another reason I'm kind of unimpressed with Sigil, because it's perfectly fine for Viserai to like sandbag a blue Mavrian with the intent to arsenal it, and if you play that Sigil, it doesn't matter if they get 2 Frostbites, because they still have a blue.
Yeah.
Clear the 2 Frostbites, swing Rosetta.
Yeah. Interesting. So,
it's not an easy matchup for Iyslander. Constellus helps a lot. I think this matchup would be miserable without the free damage from Olivian Constellus.
No, for sure.
But with it, I think you have to play very efficiently. Cold Snap I've really liked in this matchup because it gives you more resources to pitch to Arcane Barrier.
I like Cold Snap in everything at all times. The card's so good.
I've actually I really like it against Viserai though.
Yeah. So what cards are we taking out in this matchup?
Okay.
So are you actually boarding out the Nourishing, or is it just felt underwhelming?
I'm not boarding out the Nourishing. It just feels underwhelming. Energy Potion is coming out.
Yep.
I'm taking 2 freezing points out. I leave the 3rd in because you're right. This can be a slow matchup, and so sometimes the stars align with Sigils of Permafrost, and it's like, here's 8.
Yeah.
I've actually found myself taking Frosting out in this matchup. It's just relatively low impact, and a lot of our disruption is good compared to 1 Arcane, 1 Frostbite.
Interesting. So, on the contrary, I've actually really liked Frosting as an option because you get to play it for 0, you pitch a blue to stop 1 Arcane, get your Constellus counter, and then spend the other 2 on Moon. So all of a sudden, that's how we build up our counters, because obviously we don't get to use Constellus every turn because you have to build up. So it's actually felt really good as a 0 cost, because sometimes you get in weird situations where it's like, I could get a Constellus counter and block Arcane, or I could shoot Moon, and Frosting lets you do both. So it's felt good for me, but again,
I mean, I'm citing 1 out. It's not like I'm out of love with the card against Viserai.
Right.
I will say I don't like Red Incarceration against Viserai because he just has the 20 blues to kind of pay for it and continue his turn like nothing. I'm very, very split on Command and Conquer. So my biggest note against playing against Viserai is that I think aside from Briar, he suffers the most from not having a 5-card hand. Like his damage is exponential, not linear, as the number of cards increases. Right. So Command and Conquer, at least threatening to take away the arsenal, is very good. But it's also a red, and we were just talking about how Aether Hail has been unimpressive because it doesn't block 3 a lot of the times. It just blocks 1 through pitching. Yeah, or it gets clunked up in hand because you don't want to use it for 1, but you just don't get the full value out of it. So are you playing Nourishing and Command and Conquer at the same time? No, I switched between which I'm playing. Okay. Currently, I'm playing Nourishing, no Command and Conquer, because I think it's more correct for Viserai to be playing Arcane Barrier 2. Yeah, I agree. Which means that they're not going to have the armor for Nourishing. But if they are playing AB1, I think at that point I would rather play CNC. But it's kind of like prior knowledge stuff that is going to be rare to know beforehand. Yeah, since we kind of touched on that really quick, we'll dive over. The most common loadout I've been seeing has been the Vexing Quill Hand, Chronodichotomy, Spellbound Creepers, and Tunic. And I think that's kind of the best thing for Viserai. In which case, Nourishing should be hitting. Yeah, I think that's correct. I've I've seen some people play Arcane Barrier 3, getting rid of creepers, which I think is wrong.
Yeah, I've also seen Arcane Barrier 3 getting rid of Tunic, which is also very wrong.
That's more incorrect. I've also seen just AB1, just the Vexing Quill Hand,
Yeah.
and then they play Skullcap, which technically has Arcane Barrier, but I'd never count the AB3 on Skullcap when you're playing against a wizard.
Right.
And that's a valid option for the VIserai, and Nourishing gets a lot worse there, because they can Skullcap and chump creepers against the Nourishing.
I think I'm okay with that.
I mean,
like if they're throwing their creepers to my Nourishing, like I'm happy because there's a bunch of interesting things that they can do with their creepers to play around our disruption.
I think that the AB1 is a fine argument for VIserai if they're tight on sideboard space, but yeah, I think 2 is ideal because they do have the blues to stop 2 arcane pretty regularly from us.
It does also give them the option of using that Vexing Quill Hand aggressively on like a Mordred Tide turn, and then retaining Arcane Barrier 1 afterwards.
1. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think, we're going to say Nourishing for now. What else? Actually, I think that's about everything that comes out.
Yeah. And then just...
over-under?
I swear we've said this 2 or 3 times. Coronet Peak is your best friend in this matchup because Runeblade is the class that suffers from 3-card hands.
Mm-hmm. And actually, because you're probably going to tax them on their turn as well, it's like less than 3 cards that they have to work with.
Yeah.
Obviously Hornet Peak. Let's see. Do we have any other big over-under performers? Let's talk about Hyperthermia. It's a weird card in the matchup.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get in this mindset of, they go Mauve Skies into Shrill, and then I'll just Hypothermia, and their turn's over. But they have creepers.
There's this card called Spellbound Creepers,
Yeah.
So it doesn't always work, right? Because they need a extra resource, they need a non-attack action in hand. But when it does work, it just feels so bad for the Iyslander.
Yeah. So I guess one quick tip on this kind of would be, if you're going to play Blizzard or Hypothermia, plan on blocking all of the arcane prior to it, so that it puts it on the VIserai. If they want to commit their creepers, they have to push arcane that turn, and they may not be able to. If you take 2 Rune Chants and then Hypothermia, the VIserai is probably like, yeah, I'll use my creepers, that's fine. But if they haven't hit any arcane, they have to think twice and may kind of hold those back and might not get as good of a usage out of them. Or they go for it and they lose their creepers. I was gonna say I had a game the other day where I ended up I forgot what card I played at Arsenal for 1, probably like an Aether Hail, and then I blocked some arcane, and then he came in with like Thorn and like 4 Rune Chants, and I'm like, I'm just pitching my entire hand because he creepered in something, and I just pitched my entire hand for Arcane Barrier. I'm like, this is fine. I don't need anything. I don't need any cards. Your creepers are gone. And we actually were talking about it afterwards, and he's like, I think I was supposed to use my Quill Hand here to make sure I kept my creepers. But yeah, because we have both the AB1 and the AB2 on the Constellus and Striders, we have that option of just throwing stuff to kill the creepers. So creepers, it's like one of the more interesting parts of the matchup as to how they're going to get value out of it.
I think this is just a good note against playing against VIserai in general, is if you have a blue that's a 3 block, it is better to stop 3 arcane than it is to block 3. Literally just because Meet and Greet exists as a card.
Yeah.
So if you can stop all their arcane and not give Meet and Greet go again, will save you a lot of damage.
Yeah, for sure. And Blizzard, I guess, is in a similar vein to that, where they can choose not to pay and creepers. If they probably wouldn't most of the time because it's going to cost them 1 extra. But if their creepers are already active with a bind counter, they may consider doing that. So just being aware that they can play around that with creepers is noteworthy.
Yeah.
How do you like
Um,
defense reactions in this matchup? Just like sink belows.
I think some number of them are a necessary evil.
Yeah.
There's this card called Swarming Gloomveil with a brutal on hit if they've made 3
Yep.
auras.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
There's this card called Meet and Greet, which is a 1-for-5 go again if you let it hit.
I mean, it's Viserai, so it's always a 1-for-5, but then it's a 1-for-6 if you let it hit.
It becomes 1-for-6. Touche. Yeah, so I think they are necessary.
Okay.
This is one of the matchups that got me off of Fate because too many D-reacts and drawing them all in the hand means that I can't stop any rune chance this turn, efficiently at least.
Having like 3 D-reacts, or 2 D-reacts in hand, and they come in with like a Vexing Malice with 7 rune chance, you just go,
yeah.
These don't do anything. So blues are often better in the matchup, because you typically will have the option of having a blue block 3. Yeah. Channel Lake Frigid's weird. I feel like it messes him up, but I played against a Viserai the other day. I played Channel Lake Frigid, and his 5-card hand still did 25 damage.
Yeah. Channel is good, not great in this matchup.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any like fancy way to put it. They're just Viserai is so resilient against frostbites and resource disruption in general.
Yeah.
Because he has an above average number of blues for an aggro deck at least.
Yeah.
And everything he does is passive damage with the non-attack actions and the Viserai ability. So even when he's overpaying for non-attacks, it's still threatening.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Interactions, tips, and tricks. Let's talk. My favorite one in the matchup is Runeblood Incantation. If they're playing that into you.
This is man, when that card came out, everyone was asking, why does this stay around after it doesn't make a rune chant anymore?
For one extra turn?
The answer is Iyslander. It's to let Iyslander get one more opportunity to respond.
Exactly. I think people have been boarding them out against me recently. I haven't been seeing them as much. Do you think
That's probably
it needs to be boarded out?
I've still been seeing them. Should it be boarded out? That's a good question. It's definitely worse than something like Mavrian,
right.
In the matchup, if not just because it costs 1, which I think is more relevant for the Viserai than the fact that it gives us an extra response before it dies. I don't know. I'm not a big Viserai player, so I'm not sure what the answer to that question is. But it certainly felt fine against me. Like 3 rune chance is 3 rune chance.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I'm not sure, because it is also interesting, because there are turn cycles where like the Viserai is playing out as normal, and then all of a sudden, we disrupt their hand, and they will come in, maybe just like what is it, Spellblade Assault Strike? Which one's the 4? 2 cost. Whichever one the 2 cost is that makes 2 rune chance. Something like that. Like that's just their entire turn, and they're fine with that because they build up rune chance. It's actually really annoying for us because we don't get a Constellus counter on that turn because there's no rune chance left over from the previous turn. So if you have Runeblood Incantation in play, all of a sudden that kind of slow setup turn that the Viserai takes is going to be giving us an opportunity to get a Constellus counter. So having a turn come in for just 1 arcane is really bad. Because like I mentioned, we gain health when they attack with it, essentially. Or whenever we get our counter. So I think that might be kind of the tipping point in my mind to say that it's not great into Iyslander. Obviously, it also gives the opportunity for like Channel Lake Frigid and Cold Snap to lock or to extra tax you. I love the card. I know a lot of people don't, but in general, I love it in Viserai. I think it's really, really good. But into Iyslander, I think it might be one of those things that should come out if you have the sideboard options for that.
I think just to summarize the VIserai matchup for Iyslander, it's difficult. It's going to test your ability to play tempo. It's going to test your ability to stay alive,
Yeah.
which is where our discussion from is it a tempo plan in the first place kind of comes from.
Yeah, for sure.
This is one of your harder aggro matchups.
All right. Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we're staying at a consistent pace. It's not picking up, but it's staying consistent. That's a thing. Next one I have on the list is Dorinthea. It's interesting because Dorinthea isn't the most common deck right now, but I think it has a lot of power into some of the top decks, barring Prism. But
this deck is you beat me to the punchline. This deck is going to be scary once Prism is drawn. Yeah. To be fair, Iyslander is going to be scary once Prism is drawn. So
yes, I think both Dory and Iyslander are going to see a lot more play once once Prism's gone. However, in my testing, this matchup has felt really, really good for Iyslander.
I agree.
We've got enough of the defense reactions in there to kind of set up and stop the Dorinthea from pushing through. We have kind of the disruption that Dorinthea's pitch is very tight. Like she doesn't have spare resources most of the time. So even one Frostbite can make it hard. She loves 5-card hands, which we have Coronet Peak. And we've got an end, like she typically would play, if she's playing defensive, she's got all the 3 blocks, but they're not 3 blocks against us. So I think kind of everything, we just have a slight edge in kind of every department in the matchup, and it kind of accumulates to feel like our cards just line up really well.
So I'm interested, would you classify this as an OTK matchup or a tempo matchup?
It's kind of in the middle of those two. It leans more towards OTK, where basically our goal is to stop Dorinthea from doing Dorinthea things.
Yeah.
And then set up in the meantime, whether that's getting chip or setting up, depending on what's in hand. And Dorinthea does not like getting stopped from doing Dorinthea things. It's really, really hard for it to get over the top with only 3 cards. So we just stop her from hitting and chip 3 damage. Stop her from hitting, chip 3, stop her from hitting, or maybe take a couple damage, set up a Frost Hex. And she also, even if she's bringing AB2 or AB3, she can't afford to do that. If she's pitching, she's pitching to AB, like she's not doing anything. So she's going to be taking that chip. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle where you're going to have 1 or 2 hexes in play. She's going to be on 20, and you're going to go, oh, I can just kill you now. But you kind of just stop her from doing her thing up until that point, and they go, oh wait, look, you're dead. Yeah, so that's kind of the basic overview. Is just take it slow. Don't get greedy. Your ice veins and stuff, you can't go, oh, I'll just take the hit, and then I'll come back with an Aether Ice Vein. Dorinthea is very scary when you let her just hit you. Obviously, that it also depends on like Go Again and stuff. If she doesn't have Go Again, you have a little more flexibility. But yeah, that's the basics of that. As far as sideboard stuff, I'm sure some people know, I used to have the what are the gloves? The Quell 1 gloves.
Conduit of Frostburn.
Conduit. I had that in there because I think it's very strong into specific matchups. The problem is,
it's one of them for sure.
Dorinthea is one of them, where if she has a big turn and wants to get over the top, she has to do 2 over instead of 1 over. The problem just kind of came down to I think we have a good Dorinthea matchup without it, or without it. So it felt overkill to dedicate a slot there. So we're going to be playing our basic standard Gauntlet and Spring Tunic. Nourishing is interesting. I guess that's kind of a discussion point in a lot of these matchups. I think it's fine as a 3-block, but a lot of Dorintheas are still going to keep some. It'll be like Refraction Bolters and like Skullcap or Crown of Providence. They might have brought Nilrune in one of those, but most.
Oh, really? I think. Okay. Are Dorintheas you're playing not playing Courage? I guess they have Tunic.
So I've gotten a mix of Courage and Tunic, which I guess if they play Courage, all of a sudden our Nourishing is like never hitting. But I don't think Courage is correct. I think Tunic is way more important. So yeah,
that's what they're going to be playing.
Yeah, I've seen a combination where they're like, oh, I need to be able to push through Frostbites and like it's like 2 extra resources on a big turn. Yeah, but Tunic is an extra card on that big turn if you've got your counter. But regardless, Nourishing is kind of weird, but it's still a 3-block. 3 blocks are good into Dorinthea.
Yep.
I'm keeping all of the defense reactions and such in for obvious reasons. Even though I said it's kind of a combo or setup matchup, you can't play E-Pots into Dorinthea. You get called with no blocks, and you're going to have a bad time.
This is a matchup where I really don't like Blizzard, because it just if you play Blizzard, it just encourages them to go tall on the current sword attack.
Interesting. So I actually quite like Blizzard for kind of that same logic, but in a slightly different way. You let them get go again, and then you let them hit you. And then you wait till resolution step, and then you more so hypothermia. Hypothermia is insane there, but Blizzard
hypo definitely stays in.
Just being able to tax at that later point. Also, yeah. Or if you play the Blizzard and they choose not to pay, you get a little more information. Yeah, actually, I take that back. Blizzard is kind of middling. Hypothermia is the insane one.
Hypo is fantastic. Yeah, Blizzard not blocking is scary. It's scary. Yeah. That's the correct way to say it.
All right, I'm taking 2 Blizzards out on screen.
We'll
go with that.
That's my sideboard note as well, as taking out 2 Blizzards.
Okay.
I've heard that you're kind of low on Insidious in this matchup. Are you still citing that out?
I think so. The reason was, obviously, you play Sigil of Permafrost as a defense reaction, and you want to be able to tax and get damage on the thing, Frost Hex, and all of a sudden Insidious Chill is proccing, and either they don't have cards in hand, or we're in reaction windows, and they'll just play the remaining cards out of their hand. So it feels like it wasn't actually making them discard quite often, and then the rest of the time it's a 2-block, which I don't like 2 blocks. So it felt like a clean, it felt like a pretty clean card to cut, and most of our other 2 blocks are more impactful. However, you have to be a little bit careful, because when you do that, you realize that your kind of OTK potential goes down, or you have to make them extend a little bit further before you can kind of go for that extra damage, because obviously you're not taxing the cards out of their hand. So I guess that ties into Amulet of Ice. It's a no block, which we said we don't like, but it's also optional to use later.
It's so good.
I still keep it in over Insidious Chill, which would seem weird at first when we were talking about not liking no blocks. But having that flexibility...
I go back and forth on if I cut 1 or 0 in this side against Dorinthea, but I really like all 3.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I mean, Ice Vein stay in. I keep telling people like Red Ice Vein is like the best card in the deck, and then I don't put yellows in. So I don't know.
I think you're crazy. I think yellows are almost just as good. There's one matchup where they're not good.
Yeah, you're probably right. Deck space is so tight. We're gonna leave all this in. Let's see. Arctic Incarceration Red. I imagine that comes out, right?
It comes out. It's good, but we just have better things to do. And it's a 2-block.
It's a red 2-block, which is scary.
Yep.
I think that's about all the cards that come out. Yeah, so I don't think there's any crazy interactions. We kind of talked about it with the Sigil of Permafrost. Insidious Chill is something you have to be careful with. We also mentioned it with the hypothermias.
Yeah, I think that's the big one, which we kind of jumped ahead on.
Yeah, because it'll be great. Like, they'll come in for 3, and you've got a defense reaction. You're like, no block. And then they go plow through? The one that gives it go again, and the next attack is +2? Or push through?
Run through.
Doing push something through. It's one of those. It's the.
I got the card right here, actually.
Oh, it's the good one. Run through. It's the good one. They do that, and they're like, sweet. I'm gonna hit. I have go again, and then I just pump on the next attack, and you're like, yeah, that's fine. I'll take 3. And then you just hypothermia after resolution, and they're like, well, I got 2 cards left in hand. and I'll pass. So yeah, hypothermia is very, very good.
Do you know what the best hypothermia against Dorinthea is?
No, I do not.
It's the one where they choose to use refraction bolters in resolution step.
Oh,
and then
yeah,
use
yeah.
a cool hypothermia.
Yeah, no, that's the exact same thing. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, having them commit their bolters and then getting them with hypothermia is crazy.
So on a similar note, in the Dorinthea's favor, Twinning Blade can be pretty good here. I think one of the things we want to do is try to block out the first sword swing, because it just it stop the second sword swing. So I'm kind of afraid of Twinning Blade.
Yeah, I think 20 is really good.
How much I'm disrupting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is also, when your hand is being taxed consistently, spending an entire card on just that twinning effect, it's hard to find the resources to get around, especially when we've got so many defense reactions in Iyslander that you have to play reacts before we finish blocking. So you kind of have a lot going on in reaction phase, and it's not as much of, hey, you come in for 3, I'll block 9, and all of a sudden the twinning's insane. But yeah, I think twinning is still important, especially if you can catch the Iyslander with 2 blocks and no blocks. I had one game against the Dorinthea that got really, really close because they went for like a glistening. They went like glistening, Steel Blade Supremacy, and Iron Song Determination. And I had like 2 blocks and 2 no blocks. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll die.
Yeah.
And they got 3 counters, drew a bunch of cards. And it was bad.
That reminds me of my first game against Dorinthea as Iyslander. Things were going great. I was at 10, I think.
Yeah.
Dorinthea was at 2. No, a little bit higher than that. And I'm like, I've got 2 frost touches out. I was like, things are doing great. We're in the second cycle solidly. I draw my hand, and it's 2 energy potions and a blizzard. And I'm like, so number 1, I should side these cards out. Number 2, I should pitch stack a little bit better and not lump no blocks together against the Dorinthea.
Yeah, it's did you end up losing that?
I lost on that turn.
Oof, yeah. That's rough. In my game that I was talking about, I ended up taking like 20 damage over 2 turns because of it, because they got the 3 counters. Got down to, I think it was 8 to 33, and I had 1 Frost Hex in play, and I ended up getting back into it because they didn't have enough gas on their turns, and I just stopped the hits, chip a couple, stop the hits, chip a couple.
Once you know how to play the matchup, it's pretty favored.
Yeah, I frequently am ending on like 20 to 25 health in the matchup. It's pretty brutal. But again, you have to be very careful though, because like I mentioned, if you draw an awkward hand and you get caught off guard, all of a sudden that lead and advantage just disappears. All right.
Should we keep going?
I think so. If you want more Dorinthea versus Iyslander stuff, plug myself. Yeah, move on.
Yeah. I saw your great gameplay video against Ethan Vincent Mansant.
Yeah, go watch that. Yeah. Self-plug. All right. On to Oldhim.
Yep, Oldhim. So this is the quintessential OTK matchup. I don't know what to say. Like, get your combo pieces out. Insidious Chills and Amulet's Device are way more important here than they are against Bravo.
Yeah.
Because Oldhim is going to try to weather those OTK turns and can do it better than Bravo can.
Yeah.
With that said, your biggest overperformer in this matchup is Energy Potion.
Oh, 100%.
Especially if the Oldhim has this annoying little card called Heart of Ice.
Yeah. Okay, quick theoretical question.
Sure.
Oldhim is not a hero. Does not exist. Does Energy Pot still make the list? Or does Energy Pot make it into your Iyslander deck?
That is an excellent question. I'm probably still playing 2.
Okay.
Because I do like it against Bravo, but I'm probably like cutting the 3rd at that point just to save sideboard space for harder matchups.
Yeah, I think this is the single matchup that solidifies Energy Pot as needs to be a 3 of in the deck, because it's so good in this matchup.
Yeah, there will always be Oldhims at events. Like this is just a solid fundamentals deck that preys on unprepared players. So you have to be prepared for it.
For sure.
That said, single biggest underperformer in this matchup is one of my favorite cards in the deck, Yellow Aether Icevein. They're going to have Arcane Barrier 3 plus Crown of Seeds, and Icevein isn't going to do anything.
Yeah.
It's the only matchup where I don't like it. I end up cutting it. Spoiler alert.
Interesting. I've seen quite a big variety in cards that Oldhims are playing into us as far as equipment loadout. I guess we can jump into that a little bit later. Actually, no, I think we should talk about it now because I think how cards perform depends very heavily on what your opponent brings, and then you have to reevaluate based on the equipment they reveal. So obviously they're all running Crown of Seeds. I think they're all going to be on Null Rune gloves. I think they should, and it's going to be Null Rune boots. So the difference is you're going to either have Tunic or Heart of Ice, and then you're either going to have Winter's Wail and Lantern or Sledge.
Yep.
So
I definitely know which one I'm more afraid of.
Well, share it. We need to know.
I'm much more afraid of Sledge and Heart of Ice, which I think is kind of free for Oldhim to play because that's their best strategy into Kano as well.
Okay.
But yeah, the ability for them to just pitch 2 blues to Heart of Ice and then Sledge means that it's expensive and painful resource-wise and life-wise to do anything on their turn.
Right.
I'm not really impressed with Winter's Wail. 1 Frostbite can be inconvenient, but blocking 3 and taking 1 Frostbite means that we still have 3 cards on our turn.
Yeah, it's usually not a big deal at that point. Okay, so let's talk about cards in the perspective of Sledge, Heart of Ice. And I think Energy Pot was one we mentioned is probably, it is specifically the Heart of Ice where you have to have Energy Pot.
Yep.
What other, I mean, I guess Ice Eternal ties into that. For the... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Ice Eternal is a much more consistent kill against Oldhim, I think. Much safer, let's put it that way. You just have to make sure that when you do play your Ice Eternal, they don't have enough resources to activate Crown of Seeds and destroy the Frostbites.
Right. Which is that's where the amulets and chills come in.
You can forget about in the heat of the moment. Yeah, and you're exactly right. That's where Insidious chills and amulets are super duper important. It's kind of funny because when Ice Eternal was being spoiled, I thought that chill was going to be important to stop the steadfast. That's not the issue. We can kill around a steadfast. The issue is breaking the frostbites.
Yeah. Also, I don't think steadfast is good. Oasis Respite is just better in almost every situation. But yeah, obviously, I don't think Oasis Respite was spoiled at the time.
Yeah, Oasis is a big pain in this matchup. Oldhim just kind of gets to play it for free, which is another reason I'm kind of low on Yellow Icevein because it just completely covers it up. I'm not playing Arctic Incarceration. It's
Wait,
red.
Really?
It blocks 2.
Really? You don't think Oldhim needing an extra blue is good? Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Arctic Incarceration out. That's terrible into Oldhim.
Man, I thought I couldn't tell if you were pulling my leg.
No, his turn costs 3 blues. He never has 3 blues instead of 2 blues.
Yeah. Blizzard Hypo, they are blues. They don't block efficiently, and
we're going to be blocking a lock.
Yeah,
we're going to block a lot.
Zealous and Rouse.
Yeah.
And then the last cut for me is Command and Conquer, because if you do try to play that card, they will just activate Crown of Seeds, and then they don't have an arsenal to be destroyed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's funny, we always keep Channel Lake Frigid in because it's a 3-block ice.
It's ice blue block 3.
But it's one of those
Red
cards
butter.
that into some of these decks that we're talking about, we haven't mentioned it, but you almost never want to cast it, and you also want to be careful not to arsenal it I made that mistake against like a Bravo yesterday, and it felt really awkward.
It's pretty good against Heart of Ice Sledge Oldhim, because then they can't pitch 2 blues.
Oh,
right?
interesting.
It costs 7 resources to Heart of Ice Sledge when a Channel Lake is up. So they're either going to have to choose to not Heart of Ice and only have 1 resource floating when they sledge, or they're going to need 3 cards and essentially show us their entire hand.
That's interesting. I thought I was making a very astute point, and then I was told I was wrong. Got it. No, that's. I mean, and it's the same thing. Like,
it's definitely an underperformer in the matchup, but
Yeah.
it has its moments, right?
yeah. So like, if they Heart of Ice, that's the one. But then you fridge it in response, making the Frostbite. Yeah, then Sledge would cost 6, and they need to pitch 2 more cards. See, this is why we have you here to tell me what I'm doing wrong and not seeing.
Hey, 2 brains is always better than 1.
Not always.
think
There's some undervalued or low value brains. Sorry,
I think
that's
you know
toxic.
what you're talking about. For the record,
We'll see. But yeah, the Channel Lake Frigid, that's a really cool interaction I hadn't thought about. I also haven't gotten to play against too many Heart of Ice Sledge Oldhims. The Oldhim I played,
they're strangely rare, which I think is wild because it's a much better strategy against both wizards.
to be fair, just based on the data we've had, Iyslander is underperforming heavily, and Kano isn't really
Kano's non-existent.
right.
Yeah.
So if you're walking into an event going, I need to prepare for Fi, I need to prepare for Briar, I need to have a game plan into Prism, and you do all that, you go, do I have sideboard space to dedicate to Iyslander? And I think moving forward, people are going to realize that it's worth those 2 slots, but right now they're just not there right now.
I think that's the scariest part about Oldhim right now, though, is that all of their Prism tech, if they are trying to tech for Prism, is coincidentally good against Iyslander. So
Yeah.
like Bravo, they need to be the aggressor here. So all the Zealous Beltings, the Rouse the Ancients, the yellow disables are those are relevant cards.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I'm actually, like we've talked about it, I think we're favored into Oldhim right now, but I think as Oldhim start to figure out the sideboard tech and the game plan, I'm a little bit scared as to how that matchup's
Yeah.
going to feel. I was talking about a hypothetical sideboard for Oldhim where they put in epots so you go for your Ice Eternal turn, make 7 Frostbites. They respond with 3 epots, or rather pitch down to 2 resources off of all the chills and stuff, then triple epot to go to 8, and then pay for crown or something. And all of a sudden, that stops like 20 plus damage. I don't know. It's just a thought that crossed my mind if epots are a thing.
I don't know if Oldhim can fit that in the 80, but if they can, it's probably good.
Probably. But they also let off a lot of pressure while setting those up. So I don't know. It was something I thought about, and I was like, I'm scared. I don't know if it's scary, but I'm scared.
So, slow and steady wins the race against Oldhim.
Yeah.
That said, your disruption is important. They need a 4-card hand to Oaken Old, like exactly a 4-card hand.
Outside of Pulse.
Outside of Pulse of Ice and Loft, which means that, like, keeping them off the 5-card hand reduces their chance of the natural Oaken Old in the first cycle through the deck. You have to be prepared for them in the second cycle, because Crown of Seeds means they get to that second cycle 3 hands faster than you do.
Yeah.
If you're both seeing 4 cards a turn, they'll get it there in 12 turns. You'll get there in 15.
Yeah. Okay. So another quick thing on that topic is Coronet Peak in the matchup. It's a weird card in the matchup.
It's. I usually want to be doing better things than Coronet Peak on my turn.
Yeah.
Your Tenderizers here, as I called them in the Bravo matchup, are much more relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Because it forces them to interact with you and not keep a 4 or 5 card hand. And if you Coronet Peak, then a lot of my experience is that it's, pitch a blue to pay 1 to coronet. Oh, and I'm also going to crown a seeds.
Right.
And I still have 4 cards in hand.
Right. But it does take away their 5th card in essence.
It does. Yeah.
So it is interesting because one thing I noticed with that play pattern is obviously they'd crown as well, and all of a sudden they don't have crown on my turn. Or sorry, on their turn they don't have crown available to stop that chip damage.
Our turn.
Yeah. It's someone's turn and they don't have an arsenal. So that felt kind of interesting because they couldn't stop the breakpoints quite as well. They also, when you'd go for, say, a Ice Eternal or something, they didn't have something in Arsenal to crown to clear Frostbites.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's interesting. And I think when you're going for the Ice Eternal, you probably want to be peeking to hopefully catch them where they get rid of their Arsenal. Spoiler, as the Oldhim, you may want to consider not paying into, or not crowning with the peak as it gets close to the end.
Yeah.
Because yeah. Sorry, you're freezing up for me. So I've lost you. We'll give you a moment to come back. Yeah, you're completely frozen. Best part is that, all right, you're back now. Cool. Welcome back.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. But yeah, I lost you there for like 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right, it cut out a little bit again there.
Just make sure to
Okay, there you go. You're good.
Okay. Oh, I see what happened. Yeah, some minor internet issues. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Recap. Just make sure to respect the pummel against Oldhim.
Yeah.
They're still going to have some number of them, even though it's probably not as many as against Bravo.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
They play a natural Oaken Old first cycle.
Yep.
You look down at your hand of 4 cards, and you have a Frost Hex in it.
Oh.
What you doing?
Oh, that's so tough.
Like, are you and taking the 50% chance that hex is bottomed? Are you stridering in the hex, which I think is not the correct
I'm never stridering the hex. The question is, am I taking the damage or am I waiting till next cycle?
Yeah. So you're blocking with 1 card and have a, right, 2/3 chance that the hex is being bottomed, or are you taking all the damage and having a 50% chance the hex is bottomed?
No. I'm good at the game. I had an Arsenal D-React and an Oasis Respite in hand. No.
Oh, I see.
No, oh man, that's because how early is this? Is like turn 1 or something? Turn 2?
Oh, we're like 4 or 5 turns in.
Oh, it gets worse and worse the later it gets.
I know.
Like super early, like turn 2, I think I'm conserving the health because you never know, your combo piece, your other hex could already be down there and they're next to each other. It obviously is going to make it rough, but you are reducing your chances of keeping that hex. And I think taking 9 right away is just, it puts you in a bad position because you're going to take damage across the matchup. There's nothing, like there's damage that you aren't going to be able to prevent effectively. So you want to kind of not take damage when you have the option. So when you don't have the option, you have the health to spare. So, that's such a tough choice.
I think you've kind of captured my opinion on it, though. If it's early, I want to conserve the life. Just commit that hex will be played early in the second cycle.
Yeah. As it gets later, you're flipping the coin.
Yeah. I want to flip the coin the later we get. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of...
You're going to give me nightmares. Why'd you have to bring that up?
Hey, you're the one that said that Oldhim should be playing E-Pawns.
Oh, no.
That's the really scary stuff.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that's kind of what I have for Oldhim.
Yeah, I mean...
just my tips for it are just Sledge is scary, Heart of Ice is scary. You should probably be playing both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good recap of it. All right, on to the next one. Next one I have on the list is Dash, which Dash is kind of the first one where when you go, or on the list that we've covered so far, where you sit down against them and if you don't know anything about their deck, it is going to be weird because you have like super full aggro Dash and you've got super control, like tons of blues, just the pistol game plan. At the Road to Nationals I was at in Kalamazoo, our top 4 had a full fatigue Dash as well as a full aggro boost Dash. So I think they both have some legs in this meta. I think boost is better, but you can't board and go, oh, it's going to be a full boost, and then sit down against a control fatigue Dash and go, I don't have the tools in my 60 to win this game. So, yeah, I guess that's the starting point. Command and Conquers are coming out. Dash is like all 3 blocks. Even against the control lists, they get a little bit annoyed by a CNC, but not that much. It's still going to be Ironhide and Tunic. Oasis or Spite is really fun into Dash, especially the control lists, because you target their pistol.
2 pistol shots is...
Right. I mean, typically they're not going to end up shooting the second pistol shot, but it still puts them in a weird position where they were planning on that. So it's super strong. Sink Below is a little bit weirder, as well as the Sigils. I think they're still good, and they make the cut, but they're interesting.
That's interesting. I'm cutting Sinks right now against Dash.
Okay.
I think, Combustible Courier is their only significant on-hit.
Yeah.
And
have you been Goliath Gauntlet Double Pounder Combustible Courier Pretend yet? I have. It's not fun.
Not as Iyslander. It's happened to me as Briar a couple of times, but
it's terrifying. I want the Sinks.
No, that's a fair argument.
But it is the one on hit. I mean, so it's the Sinks would be in there less so as stopping on hits and more so as stopping 4 damage, because if we speak to specifically the boost aggro Dash, they run out of gas very quickly. They have so much power early on, but they will run out of gas and slow down. So if you can disrupt their early turns with their pounders, and get to where they don't have pounders and it's just normal damage turns, you can kind of win the turn over turn there. But interesting on the Sinks. It's a weird spot on EPOT. I think I'm still cutting them. Even into the fatigue lists, I don't think you need them. And they're a liability into aggro.
Yeah, I'm cutting 2. I'm keeping 1 in, kind of hedging if they are fatigued, because I think you can get away with 1 no block in hand against the aggro.
That's fair.
You want a blue to do something on your turn.
Right.
But 1 energy potion plus Tunic is 3 resources. Makes some of your combo turns a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of hedging to either matchup when I'm sitting across from a Dash with no prior information.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Red Arctic Incarcerations are coming out. Obviously, the aggro lists are still on way too many blues. They don't care that much. So one I've been kind of debating for a while is Blizzard. Because they've got so many blues, I think it comes out.
So again, I'm hedging here.
Okay.
I'm cutting 2.
All right.
It can be good against the boost. It's not very good against pistol. Because pistol was just trying to pitch every blue in their hand to pistol fatigue anyways.
Yeah. And we end up trading basically a blue for a blue, which is not incredible. It's fine, I guess.
I think it's favorable for Dash.
Yeah.
When they're pistol fatigued.
Yeah. What other interesting?
Trade is favorable.
Right.
Yeah.
Nourishing is... I don't think any Dashes are going to be bringing Tunic, and I don't know that they need to. So they're always going to have 2 block that they want to throw away on that. They should be on Accelerator, Visiatronic, and they wouldn't have block on gloves. So
No, they'll have Goliath Gauntlet. The Nourishing will hit.
Yeah, Nourishing hits.
Unless they have Oasis.
Okay, so we keep that in.
Yep.
Amulet of Ice.
I'm trading 1.
Okay.
It is good, but it is a no block. Again, I'm just kind of hedging because I don't know if they're going to be on boost aggro or not.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I know you had talked about with like the Rune Blades, where as an aggressive deck, their damage scales exponentially. I feel like Dash's damage is very linear.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the definition of like a fair aggro deck, I think.
Right. So that kind of puts us in a position where, taxing 2 resources might not be as effective. I think it's still effective, but they've already attacked most of the time. So I'm curious if that plays into the Insidious Chill board. I hadn't really thought about that, but is that something that's powerful in the matchup still?
I mean, you've got to have it for the
OTK?
right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Chill is at least a 2 block. I'm not hitting Chill in this matchup.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't in the past, and I was just like, that crossed my mind, so I said it. And I was told that I was wrong. Got it.
Oh, no.
No, I'm kidding. That was a joke. You're good. You're good. Let's see. Sigil of Permafrosts. Those are weird. They feel very underwhelming in the matchup.
Underwhelming. I think they just make the cut because they're fine against either strategy.
Yeah. It also,
does that make sense?
Yeah, they're also needed for the OTK, or they facilitate one of your big combo turns into the control list. But I'm curious if we got tight on things that we needed to get rid of. Sigil, I could see cutting some number of.
I don't know. So the issue, or what makes OTK Pistol Fatigue difficult, is we need to get into our second cycle a little bit, right? So we'll set up our Frost Hexes and our other combo pieces first cycle through the deck.
Yeah.
And unless those pieces are very early and we get lucky and there is a natural kill hand in that first cycle,
yeah,
we have to wait until the second cycle. Pistol Dash gets their items out in the first cycle and immediately has all their damage on the board every turn. So they arrive at their combo faster than we do.
Okay.
So I'm very wary of citing out pieces that might let us naturally draw the combo first cycle.
Interesting.
Even if they're like a little bit subpar. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. The way I had been looking at it was kind of that. I mean, I haven't played the matchup too much, but the way I was kind of looking at it was we have so many kind of lockout cards. Hypothermia and Channel Lake Frigid.
Like All-Star.
We can basically count Hypothermia as a free turn of your opponent not doing anything major, and then Channel Lake Frigid is almost that, but can be upwards of 3 turns.
Yeah.
So
Channel,
that's like 10 to 12 turns of them not getting to play the game.
So Channel is fantastic. Hypothermia will turn off all of their go again, but if you don't have a way to cycle the other 3 cards in your hand, you're not getting to your second cycle faster.
Okay.
So when you play that hypo, you need to make sure that you can spend all of the cards in your hand, and you're not just using Coronet. Otherwise, we're not getting there faster.
I mean, right? So we play the hypo, we block with 1 card, we pitch another card for Moon, and we pitch another card for Coronet Peak, and then Arsenal the last one. So you should be able
to 4.
Yeah, you should be able to get through it. And so I just see Hypothermia as I get to see 4 new cards.
All right.
Interesting. Yeah, so I'm not sure that...
me that the good card is even better.
Yeah, the card's insane. Channel Lake Frigid also is in a similar vein. Which actually, it's weird. It ties in... It hasn't been mentioned too much in the other matchups because there's no real... This is the only control deck that actually is hurt, or OTK deck that's really hurt by Channel Lake Frigid. But the point being that these things like Aether Hail, Aether Ice Vein, actually less Aether Hail, Ice Bolt, Aether Ice Vein, and Freezing Point are our primary ways of getting 2 ice cards in the pitch on the second Channel Lake Frigid turn. So those cards are super important for keeping Channel for, I guess, the third turn for dash. So while you call them tenderizers,
Tenderizers.
they kind of serve that dual purpose of stopping an entire another turn. Yeah, so they become even more valuable in this matchup.
Yep, absolutely.
What other interesting things do we have going on for this matchup? I think that's most of it. Again, we can do hypothermia in resolution, but it's not too relevant. The only notable one would be pistol dash. You let them use their induction chamber counter first before you reveal the hypothermia. But
just makes them waste one resource.
Right. Just one resource out of their hand is good. We take free resources. I think, yeah, I need to test the matchup more. I've played into the boost dash. I've learned that against boost dash, you don't want them to go first and play pounder, a second pounder on turn one. That hurts.
Not.
I mean, there's not much you can do about it, but that is their kind of best start in. It's ridiculous how much of an advantage that gives them. I think we're slightly favored into boost. Actually, it might be quite a bit into boost if they don't do that. If they do that, I think it's like a 50-50 or slightly unfavored. Like, it's so impactful if they get to go first and do that. Yeah. Actually, so I got one more thing. You're playing boost dash, and there's a Channel Lake Frigid in play. Do you like try and play through it? Because that's a weird thing where, like, if you try and play through a Channel Lake Frigid, a lot of times you're just gonna end up taking chip when you have no resources left. Or do you want to hold back like a blue?
Man, I'm probably.
And I guess that applies to combo as well.
It depends on if I have a Teklo Pounder out. I think inefficiently using a Teklo Pounder counter is not worth it.
Right. So if Pounder's out, you don't try and push through.
Right. Okay. Because you're making that extra or free Pounder damage easier to block.
Yeah.
And diminishing the return value of Pounder.
Yeah. And I guess the same question goes for the control dash. If there's a Channel Lake Frigid in play, are you throwing away all your blues to try and shoot the pistols a couple times? Or do you go, hey, I'm going to hold these blues and you can't deal damage to me? Because obviously if you try and shoot your pistols and then run out of resources and then you start taking chip and you get easier to kill.
I think... So I'm probably using... If I'm pistol dash, I have 4 blues in hand.
Yeah.
I'm using the first 6 resources to shoot pistol. I'm probably sandbagging the last 2 because what's the most the Iyslander is going to do is Ice Bolt plus Waning Moon, which is 6, and you're not leaking anything at that point.
Yeah. And actually, I suppose depending on the amount of items you have in play, you may want to pitch that third blue to leave 2 floating. And just spend 1 of that, so you have kind of 5 resources available. But then if the turn passes, you get to draw up 3 new cards to dig towards those items. But yeah, just probably don't overextend into Channel Lake Frigids, because you're not using your resources efficiently, and it leaves you open to take a lot of chip.
And actually, with a pistol dash in the presence of a Channel Lake, you probably are just loading items. You're not actually shooting anything.
Yeah.
Just like loading, sandbagging resources to preserve life.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But I think that about is the dash up.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's all I got. I should add something interesting here, but I don't have anything. We're on to the next one.
Katsu.
Katsu.
I think this hero is really underrated right now. I think Katsu is very good. But I think we have a pretty solid game plan into him. So Katsu is one of those heroes, one of the few heroes where I'm playing a 10, but it's tempo in air quotes.
Okay.
I think Katsu is the only deck where I actually really enjoy getting 1 to 2 Frost Hexes out and will prioritize it. Against 5, Frost Hexes are like gravy.
Yeah.
Katsu's Kodachis are so efficient at chipping your life down that you kind of need a combo finish or else you just die.
Right. Huh.
And a mini combo finish, right? No Ice Eternal for 30. So Frost Hex is like a strange overperformer here.
Okay.
Hypothermia is ridiculous
It's so
in this
good.
matchup. It's so good.
Yeah, even like letting a whelming hit because you couldn't do anything about it, and just be like, oh, we'll just hypothermia here, and your draws do nothing. And if they lead with Kadachi, they get punished. I'm curious, the Katsus that you play against, how frequently do they lead with Kadachis now against you?
Yeah, so it is definitely decreasing.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to the best Katsu I know, and his plan is he spends the first turn or two of the game figuring out is it a hard fuse tempo Iyslander like the Weather Vane lists that we've seen on the fringes, or is it kind of the more controlling Iyslander? And if it's the former, he will lead with Kadachis because 3 times a game he'll get blown out with hypo, and other than that, they don't play on their opponent's turn as often because they're wanting to do these huge Weather Vanes. The controlling lists, he has talked about presenting his most important things first before Iyslander can disrupt.
Right. So just leading with Surging Strike if you can. Seems pretty good.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I've we've just talked about how good hypothermia is.
You froze for me.
I've kind of found Blizzard to underperform here. It's good. It trades a blue out of your hand for a blue out of their hand, but it doesn't block, which can be shing if they draw a natural combo line.
Right.
And I think modern Katsus are playing a little bit more blues than they used to. I think the days of like 14 blue Katsu are over.
Yeah.
And so they're a little bit more like VIserai in terms of just being kind of resilient to the Blizzard.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so let's start with some basic cards that are getting sided out.
Okay.
What do we have? Are you not playing the Blizzard, or is it just underwhelming?
I'm playing Blizzard. It's just not the best.
Yeah.
Energy Potion is coming out.
Yep. I think that's a common theme with aggro decks.
Yeah, with the aggro decks for sure. I'm not playing Command and Conquer here. Katsu has good 5-card hands, but his 4-card hands I think are just as scary, and he pretty happily eats, not just as scary, only slightly less scary.
Yeah.
And I think he pretty happily eats Command and Conquer and just moves on to the next turn.
Are we mad if he eats Command and Conquer though? Like, that's 6 damage. I'm a big fan of 6 damage.
6 damage is very good. Keeping 3 cards to play Command and Conquer, pitching a card to play it, and having an arsenal is a big ask, because that means we are taking much more than 6 damage on Katsu's prior turn.
That's fair. So, but the cards that you keep are going to be comparable to something like an Aether Ice Vein, right? And they're both taking away 1 card.
Yeah, but Command and Conquer doesn't synergize with Insidious Chill. Aether Ice Vein does. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, just a thought. But yeah, Command and Conquer out. Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm taking out 1 to 2 Freezing Point. I think having Tall Arcane in for when you need to kill is important. But it's definitely not a 3 of in this matchup because it's red and it costs 3.
Yeah.
I'm taking out 1 to 2 Amulet of Ice. They don't block.
Yeah.
Insidious Chill is just better.
Yeah.
You ever God. You ever look at a red Whelming and you have a 2 block and a no block in hand, you're gonna be very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
And then this is a weird matchup where I'm actually cutting. This might be completely wrong for the record. I'm actually cutting 3 Frosting just because I think.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second, and I thought we weren't going to hear. And you have cut out again, but I heard that it's Frosting that's cut.
Am I back now?
Yes, now you are. So Frosting is coming out.
Yeah, I might get ridiculed for that, but everything else is so good. Like Channel Lake is good, Cold Snap is good, Blizzard is good enough. I'm a little low on it, but I'm higher than Frosting, dealing 1 arcane. Hypothermia is amazing. I can only present 60 cards, right? I can't present more. I don't want to present more than 60 cards.
Yeah, we will never present more than 60. We never get fatigued if you play properly. For those of you who are aware, I got fatigued. We're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
You never get fatigued. We'll go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But interesting. So Frosting has always felt like very solid because you get a lot of those clunky hands where you draw like a Sigil of Permafrost or an Oasis Respite and it doesn't line up properly. If I have a Frosting in Arsenal, like I'm so happy to see one of those cards. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I've ever cut Frosting, but I might give it a shot.
I just don't know what else I'm cutting.
Yeah, that is true. So are you playing the red Arctic Incarcerations in this matchup?
I am.
Okay.
And there's definitely an argument to take those out over Frosting. But forcing Katsu to start the turn down 1 blue, I think telegraphs their turn a lot more.
Right.
You don't know if that's like a natural combo piece in their hand. When they have had to pitch an extra card just to start the turn.
Yeah.
So I find it like more relevant against Katsu than just the resource taps.
Okay. Yeah, because you get to see their hand. That's interesting. Yeah. So then that plays into Arctic Incarceration is really good when you want to block with like 2 cards and you arsenal the blue and play the Incarceration. Kind of lets you get a better grip on the game. Okay. What else do we have?
Frosting, Epot, CNC, some points, some number of amulets. That's 13.
Yeah, that looks about right actually. I had forgotten to click on the frostings, so the numbers didn't line up.
Oh yeah. And I could be totally wrong about that. I'd love to hear a discussion in the comments about that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about a lot of these sideboard plans is we're kind of going based on what we know of what the opponents will do. And as opponents adapt to playing against more Icelanders, they're going to change their game plan, and then our sideboards have to change. And there's a lot of moving pieces. And then, obviously, whenever you play against an opponent, if you know things about their deck from previous experiences, that can impact how you sideboard as well.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I think playing into this matchup, we talked about how I feel hexes are like strangely important for an aggro game.
Mm-hmm.
Channel Lake is your friend.
Yes.
It makes Kodachis almost useless. No one wants to pay 2 resources for 1 damage. Just keep it out as long as you can. I want to warn, especially newer players, don't overblock a suspicious snatch. Make them have the Razor.
Yeah.
Because if you block 7 on a snatch that like looks too early in the turn, like it's not their last card, and they have no resources floating.
Yeah.
That means they have the Razor. Like they have the Razor. And if you block it out, they get to arsenal that Razor, and guess what? They still have the Razor.
Yeah, that Razor's going on a whelming next turn after a surging, and you're gonna be sad. Just have the reaction. It's fine.
And I think the biggest advice I can give in this matchup is don't blindly hypothermia the first Kodachi they throw out. Hypothermia is one of your most valuable tools here because it completely steals tempo. Try to conserve it for an Ice Vein turn if you can. Obviously, don't sit on it for 4 turns in Arsenal. But
interesting.
Like getting to hold a 4-card hand by using hypo and like blocking or whatever, and like safely deploying that Ice Vein is a really good way to start swinging the tempo of the game in your favor without hemorrhaging life like you normally have to play an Ice Vein.
Yeah. So it's because there are a lot of Katsu turns that hypothermia doesn't really stop early on. Like if they go surging into whelming, that even if you hypo the whelming, you're still 9 damage threatened. So
yeah,
I feel like, I don't know, in my eyes, I would say if I get an opportunity to end their turn at 1 damage, I'm just going to take that because next turn, that opportunity to stop their turn might not be until 9 damage has been presented.
Yeah, So if I have a hypo when they present a surging, I usually eat the surging.
Okay.
Because then they Katsu for the red whelming, and you kind of get to waste one of their red whelmings.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be able to continue into a combo line. It's even grosser if they naturally have the whelming, because you let it hit, they draw a card, they activate the Katsu ability,
They get the
tutor a combo
Magenshi.
beat, they tutor the Magenshi,
Yeah.
and then you play Hypothermia.
On the whelming. Yeah, that's gross.
Now they have a yellow that with nothing to do with it.
Well, Katsu banishes, so their Magenshi is just removed from the game off that.
Oh, it's even worse. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, that's spicy.
Actually, that's a very important thing. Don't let a Katsu tutor a card and then pitch it to your AB because it's not in their hand.
Yeah.
It's in banished.
I had that happen with a VIserai at one point where he what's the card? Rattlebones, a swarming, and then I played Frostbite, so he couldn't play it anymore, and he tried to arsenal it. I was like, that's not how that works. that card's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it yeah.
Yeah, I think that's that.
Tips for the Katsu.
Yeah.
Try to identify what the Icelander's plan is early. If they're playing the Weathervane tempo deck, maximize your damage because they're going to disrupt you less often. If they're playing the control deck, threats early, even if it means missing out on like optimum threatening mask triggers. You're very rarely going to get a mask trigger off of a control deck.
Right.
So like threatening it isn't super it's relevant. It's not the best thing you can be doing. Katsu should be playing AB 1 or 2. There's a valid argument for breaking scales. There's also just a valid argument for Tide Flippers plus Northern Gloves.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one is correct yet.
Yeah.
But Master Momentum and Tunic, both very important. Don't play Heart and Cross Trap.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely Tunic. It's not over fast enough with Cross Strap. It's actually funny that Katsu was one of the matchups where I wanted Conduit because of like breaking scales and ancestral empowerment. Just having that as an option for if they go for their cheeky +1, get the on hit. But unless we start seeing a ton of Katsus, I don't see it making it back in the deck list in the near future.
I agree. Yep.
But if there are, it's really good there.
Yeah,
it's just my glove counters your gloves, and that's fine. Yep. Yeah, I'm also not sure on the AB. It's interesting because Katsu does have those excess blues, and he also can get caught with like that hypothermia. And if my hand isn't great when I hypothermia, I want to like Waning Moon, and him just being able to stop some of that chip can be valuable.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it sounds like Katsu. Let's jump into Lexi, unless you have any other closing notes on that.
No, that's about what I think about the matchup.
Sweet.
It's really fun. That's one of the more fun ones. I think it's not incredibly Iyslander favored, so like it will really test your skill for both players.
Yeah. I mean, I find that about most of these matchups. I enjoyed it. My opponents don't always enjoy it, but I enjoy it. Even if I'm not favored, I enjoy it.
So speaking about a hero that can be very unfun to play against, Lexi, what do you think?
I am in a weird spot with the Lexi matchup. I think there's a lot of interesting interactions on both sides, and I don't know what the correct answer is on a lot of these. So I guess we'll kind of just dive into like what I've been sideboarding. This is a matchup where I like CNC. CNC is pretty good.
Absolutely. This matchup is the reason I'm playing Command and Conquer over Fendel's Fighting Spirit as a popper.
Yeah.
Command and Conquer is ridiculous into Lexi.
Yeah. As someone, I played a ton of Lexi during Tales of Aria, and I was on the receiving side of a lot of Command and Conquers, and was very sad. And then finally, I played against a Lexi with Iyslander, and I got to Command and Conquer, and just the look on their face getting Command and Conquered, it's like, it was all worth it. That was wonderful.
Yeah. Now with Command and Conquer staying in, this is
Nourishing
one of
is
a few
out.
matchups where
Yep.
Nourishing definitely comes out.
Yeah, you don't want to. I mean, it's probably okay as a 3-block, but I'm not gonna play to that high roll. I would also be very upset as is Lexi if I got Nourishing and then Command and Conquered. Like that's just rude. You don't get to do that.
It's disrespectful.
Take out your Nourishing. Yeah.
I don't like defense reactions against Lexi because she pretty consistently gives us exactly 1 frostbite.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one where I'm torn on it. Because Sigil is really strong. And I think we can pay through 1 frostbite reasonably. I don't know. The D-Reacts are... Yeah, I'm torn on that. So
Sigil is the 1 D-React I'm keeping in, actually. Yeah. I'm taking out Oasis and Sync.
Yeah. I could see that. Because you're already planning on pitching for Sigil. And Sync, you weren't. So if they... Also, some of them are running Heart of Ice. In addition to that Frostbite.
Oh my gosh, those are rough games.
I don't know. Heart of Ice didn't feel as crazy as I thought.
I mean, so I agree that Iyslander is playing on Icelander's turn a lot in this matchup.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why you weren't as bothered by Heart of Ice.
Yeah, it was actually kind of weird. Yeah, I'm not sure because again the Tunic resource, Lexi, at least the kind of the big Art of War, Rain Razor, 3 of a kind decks want that 6-card hand. So having that Tunic available gives you that option. Also, Lexi can be kind of tight on resources. So when you're essentially you're taxing yourself 1 resource with the Heart of Ice essentially, and then trying to play. So you go Heart of Ice and they respond with a Frostbite. You need to assume you need 2 extra resources for the turn. And that can be a problem. Or they go Winter's Bite and you need 3 extra resources for the turn. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not sure which one is the way to go. But yeah.
This is another matchup where Energy Potion is an easy cut.
Yeah, definitely. Hypothermia is really, really good.
Hypo is fantastic.
Channel Lake Frigid's really good. Yep.
Channel Lake Frigid is really good.
And that's all for the...
They're just resources.
Yeah, the same way I was talking about. As Rangers, you don't have enough spare resources because you can't run as many blues as you'd want because you have to actually attack with those cards and not a weapon. So resource tax is really important into Lexi. So yeah, the Blizzards are really good. How do we feel about Amulets and Insidious Chills? I think Insidious Chills pretty much always stay in, barring Dorinthea.
Oh, Chills in. Yep.
Yeah. Amulet of Ice?
Amulet, I'm cutting 1.
Okay, that makes sense.
Lexi really struggles if you strip her hand to present anything back at you aside from like vanilla 5 damage.
Yeah.
So Amulet is very valuable. I'm cutting 1 because it doesn't block and I have to get it to 13 cards somehow.
Yeah.
Side out. Like it's a good card against Lexi for sure. I'm cutting 2 freezing points here.
Yeah. Definitely.
You can probably cut all 3. I just kind of like the tall arcane sometimes as a finisher.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In a lot of these aggro matchups, I'm leaving like 1 freezing in or 2 freezings. It's kind of the card's fine, but it's not great. It's fine. It's a 3-block, and when you need to play it proactively, it does a decent amount of damage, but you don't miss it if it's gone. Yeah, I mean, and it's going to play similar to a lot of these other tempo matchups where, the resource tax is important. But one interesting thing about the matchup is the Voltaire interactions. You get to see a little bit of this with VIserai's creepers, but to a much lesser extent. Lexi is able to obviously use Voltaire as an instant. I guess I'll get into the playing around stuff with it, but the first one is the way Voltaire works is she pays 1 for Voltaire, and then that's your window to respond. If you don't respond, Voltaire will resolve, assuming it's the last or the only layer on the stack. It'll resolve. She loads the arrow, chooses the mode, and then immediately regains priority. So you don't have a window with something like Cold Snap to freeze an arrow that she loads. So it makes it kind of difficult to tax or play around and see what card got loaded and then react from that point. You don't get that window. Also, from the Lexi side, you can say activate Voltaire. The Iyslander plays their taxing cards, and then you go, okay, I now want to use a different arrow and do a different mode than I originally planned because of this new information. So that's one of the things that Lexi really has going for her in the matchup, is the ability to kind of change the turn plan after seeing the tax. Or if your opponent doesn't want to tax, you get to play immediately without them being able to do stuff. Another interesting one is stuff with like Channel Lake Frigid. It could be like, I'm going to activate Voltaire, and the Iyslander responds with Channel Lake Frigid. You can activate Voltaire a second time before the channel resolves and kind of save that resource. There's also interesting things where like you end your turn with a face-up card in your arsenal, and then the Iyslander goes, oh, Coronet Peak. You can pitch to peak and then load a second card. Typically, that would only be in the case of like a bolt and shot when you had Rain Razors or some way of giving it go again. But you could also have just like a face-up ice card that you were planning on playing that turn anyways, and you can kind of math out your resources a little bit. So Voltaire is an interesting thing in that department. It also has implications with Ice Eternal. If you were to have a Frost Hex or 2 in play, it's something that you can activate to try and clear if you are left with enough cards in hand. Yeah, Voltaire's interesting. That priority window is probably the biggest one, is make sure that you activate Voltaire, you give the Iyslander the window. Don't immediately slap it down there and say what you're doing, because they have their only window is before they see the arrow.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think similarly, it's important to note that the Lexi ability to give Iyslander Frostbite by flipping an ice card in an arsenal is very annoying.
Yep.
But the Iyslander can respond to that, and keep that in mind as the Iyslander player, is they're giving you a window of opportunity untaxed before the Frostbite is generated.
Right. Also, Lexi flips as cost, so we get to see the card in arsenal and plan the taxing based on that.
Yeah.
As with some of the other matchups that have that reaction step stuff, know that your hypothermias should be done during resolution to those arrows. So if they had a lightning press that they happen to have, they don't have that window.
And they have to arsenal the lightning press into turn.
Yeah.
And they flip it to the Lexi ability. It's a lot less scary because you know it's coming.
Right. So, okay. Funny little interaction that could happen there that I crossed my mind. They start their turn, they go flip lightning press. You respond with Cold Snap. They can respond with Voltaire, load an arrow, cast the lightning press on the arrow that's still in their arsenal, because it just has to target an attack. If I'm not mistaken. You will have to double check on that, but it says just target an attack.
Work? Hold on.
It's still an attack.
I should not use the internet right now. My connection is unstable as is.
Because you can target attack actions during the layer step before they're actually attacking with lightning press.
Yeah.
So I think you could do that and then get her. Oh, actually, no, never mind. Then ignore me, because the Cold Snap doesn't target, so that wouldn't really matter because they would just freeze the arrow at that point. But it would be cool. But
there's probably an interesting interaction there that we just haven't unlocked yet. Yeah. Voltaire as an instant means all kinds of wacky
stuff. So it's very important to understand when priority windows are and how all of those interact when you want to activate stuff around Frostbites. Like even stuff as simple as your opponent's going to make, or the Icelander's going to make some Frostbites to end your turn. You just instant Voltaire an arrow and then just pass arsenaling the second card, so you get that 6-card hand on the next turn.
Yep. And your dreams are ruined by Command and Conquer.
Right. But yeah, with all those interactions, that's why it's been so difficult to evaluate the matchup, because there are all these little interactions that the people that we play against may not be familiar with or haven't practiced those interactions, or there's interactions that I haven't seen playing against Lexi's as what I should be doing. So I don't know. I've heard such differing opinions from we're very favored to it's near unwinnable, and I don't know what it is.
So in my experience, I think we're slightly unfavored.
Okay.
I think once Alexi starts rolling hot, it's hard to disrupt them enough to get them off of that. But when they do have their whiff turn, you can have a great opportunity to steal the game.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like I think you have a pretty solid grasp on the matchup. I understand you're a bit of a ranger at heart.
Yeah, so
like
I know all of the interactions on both decks. I just haven't pitted them together to know how that pans out. And actually,
man, I think you nailed it, though. I don't know what else I can offer in regards to the Lexi matchup.
What was that?
I think you nailed it. I don't know what else I can offer with advice for the Lexi matchup. Yeah,
I think as far as evaluating the matchup, it also is really difficult because Lexi is such a high variance deck in its current iteration. A lot of its losses are to itself, so it might lose to itself, and you're like, "Wow, I did so good." And then it could also just draw the nuts, and you go, "Wow, I don't know how I ever beat that." And it's just don't let them draw like that. So I think that's something that will, as we play that matchup more, we'll start to see how the actual average is. But Lexi is a deck that if it draws hot, beats anything, and if it draws bad, it loses to everything. Yeah. So I think that's about all there's to say about that matchup. Yeah. So we have probably the most fun one to talk about coming up.
Yeah, I feel like this could be its own video entirely.
Actually, let's double back really quick. Lexi equipment loadout. Obviously New Horizon. I think there's debate between Heart of Ice and Tunic. But
and then there's also debate, I think, between Bullseye Bracers and Shock Charmers.
Ooh, that's a hot take. I think it's always Bullseye Bracers.
Do you think Bullseye Bracers always?
Yeah. Shock Charmers, I don't think the AB2 is... Or sorry, the Spell Void 2, I don't think it's relevant enough.
Oh, I don't think it's the Spell Void 2. I think it's the repeated damage effects from your fused arrows.
Maybe, but Chilling Ice Vein doesn't even hurt us that bad. We can just plan on one spare resource or wait until after that's resolved. I don't know. Maybe.
So Bullseye Bracer probably is the correct answer.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say boots, because I've seen some bringing Nil Rune boots, and I've seen some continue to use the snaps.
So I think I think they should probably be playing Nil Rune boots.
Yeah.
I mean, I
don't know. Snaps are interesting, though.
It's a mess. It's a mess. I don't understand the matchup well enough. Yeah. I'll admit it.
And again, like I said, it's hard to evaluate how something plays when Lexi inherently is such a high variance deck.
I know some pretty good rangers. I can pick their brain and
all right. Cool. All right, we'll go back to what we just talked about, the mirror match.
Yeah, this could be a whole video unto itself.
Right? So we're 2.5 hours in. We got the next 2.5 hours on the mirror, and then we'll get to the rest, right?
God. I can't stay up. I can't do that long.
Okay. So how many games into the mirror have you played?
Mirror.
How much have you played the mirror?
Probably fewer than you. I've played...
Oh, you froze as soon as you said I've played.
Probably around a dozen mirror games.
A dozen? Okay.
Yeah, around a dozen.
Cool. You actually might have played more than me.
Okay. And so I've played it pretty evenly split between... So I would call my build a control build.
Yeah.
Versus the tempo fuse builds. I've played it about split 50-50. This is a tempo in air quotes game plan matchup, which is really weird because if you look at an Iyslander deck, everything that says this should be an OTK plan. They have a ton of blues. They can break or frostbites easy. They are only doing one action a turn, so It feels like OTK is the correct answer. It's not.
Yeah, I agree.
Your frost hexes are super important.
Yep.
But less because it's OTK, and more because the bigger freezing point wins.
Yeah.
Which sounds really reductionist, but that's usually what it comes down to, I feel like.
Yeah,
Channel Frigid is just a monster.
Oh
in this
my
matchup.
goodness.
Oh my god.
Did you get a chance to watch the games I played against Pitch Stack over on his channel?
I haven't yet. But
those it's at one point in the game we lost track of whose turn it was. I was playing stuff out at my arsenal at instant speed on my own turn, and then like 5 minutes later, while still trying to resolve the stack, we realized, and then we had to go back. It was a mess.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, I agree entirely that it's a very weird like tempo game. And the reason it's the tempo game is because Iyslander has this option of playing on both players' turns. So if you were just to go, oh, I'm just going to not do much and then hold these blues so I can stop their arcane, the other Iyslander is going to go, oh, that's fine. I'm going to play my cards, strip your hand, and then I'll play out of arsenal and get chip damage in when you don't have any cards and kind of reset it. So you have to play your cards as efficiently as possible at all points. But yeah, go ahead and continue.
What I've kind of found is, I'm interested to see if you or disagree. I think that jockeying, you're the player going into your turn with 4 to 5 cards is how you win the game.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, when you get put on the back foot, it's really bad.
Yeah, I think being able to fuse Ice Veins on your turn and then throw a little bit of disruption on their turn when their hands are stripped down is superior than intentionally playing on their turn primarily.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to play on your turn. Unless they have no cards and you have cards, then you can play on their turn and get free damage.
Of course. If you get free damage, you get free damage. Alluvian Constellus is good here. So
only good?
It's great. It's great. I feel like its primary use is breaking frostbites.
Oh, like, yeah, no, I agree. And that's so
your damage. It upgrades your damage for free, right? But I think its greater utility is in breaking frostbites and conserving hex damage as a consequence.
Whenever possible, you want this to sit between 2 and 4 counters to have that option. So like you hit 2 counters and you're like, oh, I could get 3 damage. Don't take the 3 damage. Keep your counters. Because it's worth more as it gets later.
Energy Potion is an underperformer here, but I think it stays in purely because it's a blue.
Right. Blues are so important.
And I guess we didn't really talk about sideboarding, did we?
Yeah. Yeah, we're super organized here. Well, let me rephrase that. James is organized, and I bring the disorganization and just kind of put everything into a mess.
So let's get the obvious cards out of the way. I'm not playing Sink Below.
Yep.
Because they have 1 attack in their deck. I'm not playing Command and Conquer because they can play that card as an instant, and then you're not conquering anything. I'm not playing Red Arctic Incarceration because they just, in response, dump their hand.
Yep.
Red Sigils because I'm not going to have anything to play them on.
Right.
And then it's like, I just need 2 cuts, so I'll cut Blizzard because it's an instant, so it doesn't turn on Moon.
How is Yellow Aether Ice Vein feeling in the matchup?
So Iyslander will be playing Arcane Barrier 4. Should be playing Arcane Barrier 4. You want to play both Metacarpus and Alluvian Constellus. Yellow Ice Vein is fine because it forces 4 resources worth of interaction out of them.
Sure, but
which can make.
No, go ahead.
Which can make I think their card that they're playing out of Arsenal kind of awkward.
Yeah.
It also is just an Ice Fuse to trigger chills and amulets. What were you gonna say?
Oh, and I was gonna say, like, but we're spending a blue plus an entire card, which is essentially value 6 to their 4. So like our 2 cards, they trade their 2 cards and they end up with 2 extra resources. And I feel like that's just an underwhelming trade most of the time. I suppose the value in there's definitely value in chill and amulet of ice. But I feel like a lot of people in not just this matchup are kind of overvaluing being able to proc chill quickly. I don't mind letting a chill sit there for a little bit until it's like, I don't want to do something inefficiently to activate chill. I'd rather wait and get it at efficient time, like Freezing Point, Red Aether Ice Vein, and Ice Eternals.
Yeah, that's fair. So I can see an argument for keeping the blizzards in because they're blue and cutting Ice Vein.
Yeah.
But I don't know. At the end of the day, Ice Vein is a card that, I mean, it forces them to interact. Blizzard is just going to be like you're never going to play a Blizzard in an Iyslander mirror.
Yeah, and you might be right. It could just be one less resource on Ice Vein is not that big of a difference between that and Blizzard, with the potential upside of being able to force them to play. So that's probably fair.
Yeah, I feel like that's really deep into the nitty gritty of the sideboarding there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some very obvious cuts that come out, and then you're left with, like, you could nitpick the last couple cards, but for the most part, based on your 80 that you brought, it's clear what, like, 62 or 63 cards you have to choose from are. Oh boy. So
I don't know how to. Yeah.
I don't know how we dive into these interactions.
How do you describe that match in a reasonable amount of time?
I don't know that there's a great way to describe it in a reasonable amount of time. I think
what we have to do is just send them to your videos, right?
Yeah.
The games you recorded.
Yeah, and honestly, there should be more recordings of those games because I think they're so interesting and so fun. Like the amount of interactions and layering and moving up and down the stack are just really, really interesting. And it feels very much so the person who is more aware of where their windows are and how to play around and do stuff is quite favored in the matchup, it feels. But yeah, so let's kind of jump in what you said was the overarching, like, goal in the matchup, which was kind of you want to be able to play with a 5-card hand. Yep. And that's how you kind of push yourself into, like, the driver's seat and make them be reactive. Because when you obviously want to pitch to Arcane Barrier quite often, because most of the cards that we're playing, like, take a red Ice Bolt, you're paying a card and 2 resources. The average value of a card should be 3. So basically we're paying 5 to do 5 arcane. So they're able to pay 5. Like, it all ends up being pretty even on all of these little exchanges. The value comes in when you're able to get stuff like your Aether Ice Vein triggers, or build up stuff like Insidious Chills and Amulet of Ices, and put them in a position where they don't get to play their cards efficiently. So yeah, being on the front foot is really big. Another card that you had talked about or alluded to was Channel Lake Frigid. As a deck with this many blues, you wouldn't think that it's crazy, but it's so good.
But so it turns out when you build your entire deck around optimizing exactly from Arsenal plus Waning Moon, Channel Lake Frigid adding 2 resources to that just ruins all of your math.
Yeah. And another thing, like I mentioned, how basically every resource is like a health in this matchup. When Channel Lake Frigid says everything you do, lose a life, like, that's really good. Like, it's so hard to play through.
Remorseless is a good card,
Except for Remorseless that applies to everything, not just attack action, or not action cards.
Not just action cards.
Yeah. Yeah, so Channel Lake Frigid is huge, especially as you start getting down to the bottom of the deck when you've got multiple hexes in play. It puts them in a very awkward situation where if they extend, they can get punished by frostbites. If they don't play, they're just passing back to you, and then you get to play on that 5-card hand again. So I think at all stages it's powerful, but especially in the late game, if you can be the one controlling the Channel Lake Frigid, you are just your opponent doesn't get to play until the Channel Lake Frigid's gone, and they also can't go for kills very effectively. How valuable are frost hexes in the matchup?
The first one is fantastic. The
Yeah.
second one is good. I'm not super interested in the third one.
That's fair. Yeah, it was weird. One of the games that I played, my opponent got 3 frost hexes down, and I had 1. But I got like 2 chills and an amulet of ice in play, and I ended up winning just off tempo because he couldn't give me enough frostbites to do anything with those frost hexes. But then there are also other times where you have 2 hexes down and you get tempo, and all of a sudden you strip their hand on your turn, and then Ice Eternal when they have no cards in hand and they just die.
Yeah, Ice Eternal is very scary in this matchup.
Oh yeah, because oftentimes when you are on the back foot, you're spending your entire hand like playing on their turn, and so if they can Ice Eternal you when you just have to pass back, you just die with multiple hexes in play. I think, like you mentioned, being able to be on the front foot is really important, but kind of at the core is just use your cards efficiently. You want to be able to cast your reds, because obviously they're really bad for pitching. Like, it's so bad to have to pitch a red in this matchup. So you want to be able to cast your reds whenever possible, and you're okay using all your blues as just block 3s.
Blocking, yeah.
Another one we talked about, I guess let's go over the Constellus interaction with frostbites. I'll let you cover that really quick.
Yeah, okay. So Waning Moon costs 2 resources. Alluvian Constellus reduces the cost of your wand by 3 resources. So if your opponent is threatening to give you exactly 1 frostbite, that's a triggered ability. You can respond to it. So you activate Alluvian Constellus in response to the frostbite. Then you let the frostbite be created. So there's a -3 applying to the cost of your weapon at this point. You can activate Waning Moon, presuming that you've played a non-attack action. And so cost increase from frostbite applies before cost decrease. So the game sees it as Waning Moon costs 2 + 1, -3 still equals 0. So you get to break the frostbite without having to actually pay for it, and still get your free Waning Moon.
Yeah.
It's super important, especially as hexes get added to the board.
Yeah. Once you get like 2 hexes in play, all of a sudden that line is getting, typically it's only going to be 2 damage off the Waning Moon, because they're typically giving you frostbites on your own turn. But still, that Constellus being able to translate to preventing 2 damage off hexes, as well as dealing 2 damage with Moon. I mean, getting 4 damage off a Constellus is really good, or 3 hexes, 5 damage. It's very, very important, which is why as you enter that late game state with multiple hexes, you want to make sure that you have Constellus available. You want to sit on higher counters. There's also interesting times where I've had where you're like on 4 counters and they go to fire Arcane at you, and you like pop Constellus, then block, go back up to 3. Then after all that, then you play the non-attack, and then you shoot. Like, there's a bunch of interesting sequencing there as well. How crazy is Oasis Respite in the matchup?
Oh my god, card is dumb.
It
like you haven't lived until you've Oasis Respited an Aether Ice Vein plus 1 Arcane Barrier.
Oh yeah.
Plus use the last resource to send your own blue Aether Hail from your arsenal.
Oh, absolutely. Also, the best is Oasis Respiting and Nourishing in the matchup.
Oh, I mean, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, actually, they're both just insane. On that note of Aether Ice Vein being 5 damage, if Iyslander became very, very common in the meta, I could see an argument for putting in a Null Rune Hood. Because Coronet Peak is doing nothing. Yeah, Coronet Peak does nothing.
Yeah, Coronet Peak, I don't think I have activated Coronet Peak.
If you activate it, you're just saying, hey, look, I just threw away a blue, shoot me. Like,
I would like to lose 4 life, please.
Right? No, they have to pay 1, so I would like to lose 2 life. That's the total trade.
Okay.
Excuse me. On my turn, I'm just going to choose lose 2 life. Yeah, Coronet Peak should not be activated. It's just there's no real reason to put in Null Rune Hood. There's not enough Icelanders.
So do you put in Null Rune Hood, or do you put in the Blitz tech and you add Hope Merchant's Hood to save you from the quad red hand, both against Kano and Iyslander?
Well, that's actually interesting.
I think this is a question we don't have to worry about for the current meta, by the way.
I could see if Prism's gone, I could see Iyslander getting much more popular. She does, like, Dromai is bad, but I don't know. I think Icelander's in a really good spot once Prism's gone. So maybe. But in the current state, no. Yeah, I think that's the short of it. Yeah. There's just so many little interactions that happen in the game that, like, we can't explain all the little weird sequences and how you go up and down stacks. It's kind of like
here all day,
right? Like, we should really just sit down and jam games on TTS. That would be better for people.
I can say, and you kind of joked about this earlier. Literally have a physical indicator of whose turn it is, and pass it back and forth between you and your opponent as the turn passes. Because otherwise, you will forget whose turn it is. Yeah,
I did actually do that for one of my Iyslander matchups in person. We grabbed an extra Iyslander token and just, like, passed that back and forth.
It's going to feel silly at first until it saves you from a massive rules headache with, like, painful judge calls.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's a fun matchup. You should play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah,
I think there's one more deck to really consider.
Yeah, one more real deck. Or one more real matchup. One of these is a real deck. It's just not a real matchup. And this one's an interesting one. It's not an incredibly common deck. It's Rhinar, for those of you who have your checklist nearby. Rhinar's interesting. Early on in testing, I had played it against Sam. He came from playing Rhinar. That was, like, his first deck. He played it at Nationals last year. He did quite well on it as well, even through the Briar meta. But he's preferred a more of a defensive game plan, and so playing against that defensive game plan, I didn't mind the matchup. Like, it felt fine. That more like club chip, he kind of like fatigue game plan. Granted, this was also, like, super early on in my Iyslander version. However, oh, go ahead.
Keep going.
Oh, no,
keep going.
Okay, I was going to say, however, I then played against an aggro version that was claws, blood rushes, all the intimidates, and it was painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think claws by far is the way to go for Rhinar here.
Yeah.
It makes things really rough.
Yeah, because we like having these defensive tools to mitigate damage taken, and we want to drag the game out. Rhinar aggro says, get rid of your hand, you're taking damage, then hit me back as hard as you can. And we're looking at a hand and going, I only needed, like, 2 of these to play, or 3, but I wanted to block with those other cards. So it makes kind of the sideboarding difficult.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how you sideboard first, because I have, like, ideas, and I don't know if they're good or not.
Right? My first take on sideboarding was take out the D-Reacts, Sigil of Permafrost, Sing Belows, Oasis Respites.
So I actually agree.
Yeah, so that was the first take. I don't know if it's correct, but that was kind of the first take. That comes out, and then we play kind of as aggressive as we can. Even stuff like Command and Conquer and Fighting Spirit are probably fine, because, like, it's still a 6 damage turn. And if that Rhinar doesn't want to block, he's taking 6 damage, so it doesn't matter if it was Arcane if he wasn't going to block it. So Yeah, and that felt okay. But again, we're in that situation where, similar to Dromai, where we have to be the aggressor, or not the strictly the aggressor, but we have to play aggressive on our turns, and we don't really have the tools to do it effectively.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
there's some discussion to keeping Oasis Respite, because a lot of their cards, like Pulping and Wild Ride, they've played the card and then the Intimidate happens. So like there is a discussion you could still play the Oasis Respite, but I'm still hesitant to have anything that requires like using 2 cards to block. So like Oasis, I have to pitch something and play the Oasis, and then the Intimidate trigger resolves, and I have nothing in hand, and I'm just wide open.
Yeah, so Oasis isn't my favorite in this matchup. I think it stays in the 60 out of necessity, because there's cards I want to sideboard out more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Um,
When I look at this matchup, so the first thing I want to do, I want to get rid of my no blocks, because a triple Intimidate and they leave you a no block will just like literally end the game.
Yeah.
So Amulet, Blizzard, Energy Potion. See ya.
Interesting.
Especially considering, well, so we definitely don't have enough time to set up Energy Potion.
Energy Pot I agree with. I think I like Amulet of Ice.
And I think there's a reasonable number of Brute, but they also can just roll Scabstons. So I'm not super high on Blizzard.
Yeah, but
Amulets are good. They don't block.
So Blizzard, they would have to roll the Scabs in advance.
Correct. Yeah.
So, but no, I think I like Amulet of Ice. Because when we get our hands intimidated, Amulet is a card with Go Again that we get to play, and then play another card. So like you can have a 4-card hand with an Aether Ice Vein. You go Amulet of Ice, Aether Ice Vein, pitching a blue Fuse, and then Arsenal the Fused card. And that lets you play out full hands better. Also,
it might be more correct over Oasis.
Blizzard I could see. So Blizzard is no, because they draw and discard. Blizzard also is interesting into stuff like Pulping and Wild Ride, because typically they're gonna only have like 1 card left in hand at that point, and that's probably the 6 cost that they want to discard. If they 1, they may not be able to afford to pay for the Blizzard, and 2, if they do, it's like their last card. I don't know. It's interesting, but I definitely want to keep Amulet of Ice. I think Blizzard is on the fence because I don't actually know how many blues they run. I feel like it's a decent number though.
Yeah, I agree that this is one of the matchups where we take Nourishing out. I mean, Encounter is fine. We're usually gonna have enough cards to play it on our turn because they're intimidating us on their turn.
Right.
And keeping Rhinar off a 5-card hand, like, almost completely eliminates the possibility of a quad Intimidate.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Like, it can still happen, but the amount of Intimidates they can get off without an Arsenal is decreased. And so I think like there's actually a reason to play Command and Conquer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think
I'm cutting.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm getting stuck with Findall's in the deck still. Findall's Fighting Spirit, just because of too many D-reacts coming out.
I think it's a necessary evil for the more popular list.
Yeah.
I'm cutting my red sigils. I don't know if you are.
I was cutting all 6 sigils.
Yeah. I think I'm leaving 1 blue in.
Oh. And you only play the 1 blue, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's fair.
And because I'm leaving Sink Below in, and the logic is that I'm fine arsenaling Sink because it's free to play.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep a sigil in because if I ever get in a situation where I have to arsenal it because like the hand doesn't do anything else, it feels terrible because you're either playing it off Tunic and wasting a Tunic counter that you can't follow up with Waning Moon.
Yeah.
Or you're pitching your card from hand and you still don't get to Waning Moon.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty low on red sigil against Rhinar.
Yeah, I agree. Makes a lot of sense. Are you playing your Arctic Incarcerations into Rhinar?
I am.
Okay.
That's asking for trouble because it blocks 2. but I can only take out so many cards, and I think, it's obvious that no blocks block less than 2 blocks.
That is accurate math.
Yeah, I go to school for these things. Also, Rhinar is a yellow deck primarily,
Right.
and so you're adding on a 1.5 card tax with 3 frostbites. It's honestly not the worst thing in the world to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's a couple interesting interactions in the matchup, namely in the form of discarding. It's very sad when you Coronet Peak and they discard a Beast Within instead of paying 1 and then get to replace the card.
Yeah, Levi does similar things, which is trying to fill her graveyard.
Right.
The Beast Within is definitely the most punishing.
Yeah, but I think it's...
They can only do that 3 times, and
right.
they can Coronet Peak every turn.
And also that means that the Beast Within's no longer in their hand, which means they can't set up a way to discard it guaranteed and still get that value. I think one of the more scary ones that you have to be careful of against Rhinar is playing Winter's Bite out of Arsenal on his turn. Because he can choose to discard and intimidate you.
Intimidate, yeah.
So you can just kill yourself if you give him an extra intimidate sometimes. So you got to be very careful on when you time your Winter's Bites. I think it still stays in because it's still just a very powerful card. But yeah, just be careful on when you're casting that into Rhinar.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't see enough Rhinars to know too many other interesting interactions. What are Rhinars running into us as far as equipment?
This is a good question. So they're definitely playing Arcane Barrier 2 in the form of Skullhorn. They definitely have Tunic. And they definitely have Scabskins because they don't play any other ledges.
Right.
It's probably a coin flip if they play Gambler's Gloves or Norrund Gloves. I think it's correct for them to play Norrund Gloves, because if they don't have AB1. They have to be pitching 2 every time they want to stop Arcane.
Yeah, I agree. Norrund 1 is really important, especially on like Aether Icebane, where you can pay for 1 Arcane and then with a blue, and then use the remaining 2. Obviously, Arcane Barrier 2 doesn't work for that. And yeah, I think
just maybe 3 total,
right,
which is relevant.
Yes, but let's see. How hard do you think a control deck is going to be? Like, I don't think they can block enough of our damage.
What, control Rhinar?
Yeah, like just a club list.
I think that we get to like semi-OTK them, and it's not.
Yeah, they don't run enough blues.
Yeah, I don't think that's a very favored Rhinar game. I think they have to claw into us.
Yeah, and I think the claw game plan is really good.
As hell. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's a good game plan into us. I think it's favored for Rhinar.
Yeah, as opposed to something like Bravo, where they have to play the aggressive game plan and it's not favored into us. Yeah, I think that's basically all I got for Rhinar. Yeah.
So that brings us to the.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pull up a strategy page for Prism. It's gonna be a menu at the nearby restaurant, and that's what you want to study for when you're playing against Prisms.
Yeah. So when I write out my sideboard guard, I always include a 2 words on what the plan is: semi-OTK, OTK, tempo.
Yeah.
Tempo with quotation marks. The plan I write next to Prism is lose.
Yeah, it's a good plan. I think you can. I think you can do that pretty consistently.
Have you beaten a Prism in CC yet?
No.
The lowest I've gotten one is 20 life.
I got one to 9.
It was so frustrating because I was drawing like as hot as I possibly could. I got 2 hexes out literally in the first 2 turns. I naturally drew Freezing Point, Sigil of Permafrost, and I'm like, oh my god, this is happening.
It's happening.
And I play out the combo. I spend Striders on Freezing Point. I'm like, this is going to put them to like 5.
Yeah.
And Prism plays a Prismatic Shield.
Oh no.
Prismatic Shield.
Oh
and
no.
It's like, okay, so she took 9 instead of like 22 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was insulting. Yeah.
Yeah.
You lose against Prism. It's.
I mean, did you have a way to like? Did you have a way to like Waning Moon in response to after the prismatic shield resolved to try and clear some of the shields?
I did not have enough resources in hand because I naturally drew the combo.
Gotcha.
So it was just like in 4 cards.
Interesting. Yeah. I think the one that I got him to 9, he wasn't really trying. He didn't really care because he knew he couldn't lose. And then I was drawing a bunch of reds. And like it was just all red things. And he's like, whatever, I'll just build up my board state. And then he still just killed me. And it didn't feel particularly close.
And if you're wondering still why we can't beat Prism, for you, the viewer, Spectra can only be destroyed with so many attack actions. We can't afford to play. We don't have a weapon.
Yeah.
We can play Talishar if we really wanted to. That kills 3 out of 27 Spectra.
Yeah, and then you lose like what, 15 damage across the game with your moon, and have no way of killing him. Sounds good.
And we can't justify playing 24 attack actions to kill the other Spectra. So eventually one will stick, and you can never get rid of it for the rest of the game.
Yep. And also, like,
we don't have the burst damage Kano. Like, Kano can get lucky with a wildfire on turn 2 and potentially win the game. Iyslander can't.
No.
You have to set up for hexes and get to your second cycle to do stupid amounts of damage, and you won't live that long.
And and then you've got stuff like Merciful. We're taking damage for our own frostbites.
Your hero power actively kills you at that point.
Yep.
It's not fun.
Genesis gaining them a health every turn. Ode,
but it's
putting your timer on like 2 turns.
It's good to have one bad matchup, right?
I don't think a matchup should exist that's this polarized. It's bad game design to be this polarized.
Yeah, Spectra was a mistake. I think LSS has realized this with the shift to allies in Uprising with Dromai. It's still unfavorable for Wizard, but it's beatable. Yeah, which makes
we get to play the game.
Games. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's Prism.
Yeah. Please win an event. I'm sitting here. I need to get like a Prism T-shirt and like one of those foam hands to cheer on Prism at all these events. Like,
man,
come on.
As much as I love Iyslander, I might take Prism to the Columbus Battle Hardened just to try to get her the last.
I thought you were gonna say Nationals, and I was about to like hang up the call and like delete the record.
No. We're playing Iyslander at Nationals.
Yeah. Good.
I'm too committed at this point.
Columbus Battle Harden's fine.
Too much. Do
your part. Well, actually, no. Isn't Columbus Battle Hardened after the announcement?
It's entirely possible that it could be.
I thought it was like September 4th or something, and the announcement's the 30th of August.
So I'm playing Iyslander at the Columbus Battle Hardened.
Yes, and there's not going to be Prism, right? She's going to be gone. First event with no Prism, we believe. Stupid Prism.
I think that's every major hero in the meta. There's a few we didn't go across. Azalea, Bolton, Kano, Levi. I'm sorry, Lead of Levias. Your hero is very good.
I'm literally the Azalea guy. And I'm saying that Azalea is on the list of not relevant heroes right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. I know that Levi can win events. Fi is a hell of a deck.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Levi might have legs right now.
Yeah.
They're somewhat weak legs, but they're legs nonetheless.
Bolton, Saber's combo can definitely win events as well. I think Iyslander counters that deck in almost every way.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I hope that these like fringe decks do become more of the meta, because I think they have some of the more interesting play compared to some of the aggro decks that we're seeing at the top right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could add a couple notes on some of these heroes. Azalea dies to a frostbite in its current iteration because your turns cost 2 and you pitch a yellow for it. So die to frostbite. Levi is interesting because if she draws blood rushes and everything early on and just runs hot, you can just run through the Iyslander. The problem is if you start building up that blood debt, Iyslander needs like one turn of strip your hand, and then you can't turn off Blood Debt, and now my 5 damage Strip Your Hand turns into 15 damage, you're just going to have a bad time. As you mentioned, Bolton's very fragile on pitch as well, so he dies to a Frostbite.
Yep.
And then Kano's weird.
I actually haven't practiced Iyslander Kano at all.
Me neither.
I have a good friend who's a diehard Kano main.
Yeah.
And he was very sad when he saw Oasis Respite.
Let's
put it that way. So now he's playing Iyslander with me.
All right. See, that's the thing, is like I think Oasis Respite is obviously painful for us as Iyslander, but it's a card that needs to exist. And I think it's a really good, healthy card. It's just sad when they do it to something that you really need to hit, like a freezing point.
Yeah, Permafrost freezing point. Getting Oasis is never a good feeling.
Yeah. But I think we have strong matchups into all of these. Kano is more on the fence, though. There is...
Honestly, I think Levi is on the fence as well. And there's a big important part that you're missing, which is giving them excuses to discard is very good for Levi.
To an extent. So I've actually played the Levi matchup a couple times. I've got a...
Coronet Peak is not a good card in that matchup. Either Ice Fangs are 6 power taps.
I disagree. I think Coronet Peak is good into Levi.
Interesting. Okay.
We're going to be playing enough stuff that gives her the option to discard and play. Like, I don't think that she's going to be struggling to get stuff into into grave, because she's going to be the aggressor and playing cards. I don't think she's going to struggle on cards in grave. So giving her discard outlet's fine. The more important part is putting her on those smaller hands where those big Blood Rush turns aren't coming in for 20 or 25.
That's fair.
Taking an extra card is more important. Obviously, the Beast Within is the sad one that we don't want to see, but it is what it is. But yeah, I think Levi is on a timer, because while she's putting herself in a position to just die, if you disrupt as she's playing more aggressive and building up her Blood Debt.
Well, we should probably stop here before we spend another hour talking about these last few
right?
heroes.
All right, we're clocking in at 3 hours and 12 minutes. That's a nice short video.
Deep dive audience, because I only do deep dives. I don't know if you've read the Wraith Times article. That is also a deep dive.
Oh, that was such a good article. I passed it along to a friend as well. He's like, yeah, well, actually, no. He was annoyed at the matchup because he plays Bravo, and he's like, yeah, it's just blocking, block, play Frost Hexes, and kill. It's basic. I'm like, no, it isn't. He's like, yeah. But it was a good article. I thoroughly enjoyed it. For those of you who want to read that, it is a paid subscription article, yeah.
It's the Wraith Times Pro Series article. To enjoy it, you'll need to subscribe to a plus tier on the FabDB Patreon. I think that starts at $8 a month. But you get access to dozens of Pro Series articles and some perks on FabDB as well, which is a great resource. It's what I use for all of my deck building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check it out if you're interested.
If that fits your budget, I think it's a really good resource just for getting into Iyslander. It goes over a lot of really important stuff.
So we talked a lot today about like tempo versus OTK. Describing the differences between those two strategies is primarily what I talk about in that article, just to set like a frame of reference.
Yeah. So if you made it this far into the video, go read the article, and then you can rewatch the video and understand what we're saying. It's fine. You have 7 hours. You're fine.
Under deep dive. Yep.
Yeah. I think that covers.
The deck is super promising. It has very few bad matchups. It is extremely skill intensive, which I love because it really tests your mettle as a player.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, you just get to watch the light fade from people's eyes as you control disrupt them to death.
Oh yeah.
It's
the look on people's face when their health goes from like 17 to like 12. They're like, oh, I'm dead. And then they chip another 3. They're like 9. I'm like, they're just like, I'm dead. This game's over. It's great. Or even better, the look on the Guardian's face when he's like coming in with a hammer and he's at 28 and you're like counting and you're like, okay, 15, 23, 29, 37. Yeah, you're dead.
Yeah, when the wizard math starts, that's when you can really see the beads of sweat. Start
Right.
Here.
Oh, that's wonderful. But yeah,
Well-
I don't have any other notes right off. I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. I could not have come up with all that information. It would have taken me just as long, but I would be doing a lot more rambling.
Yeah.
It was also super fun with bouncing ideas off each other because, as we
I
saw,
think
we had disagreements on some of these things.
You gave me a lot of really valid points to think about, and my sideboard will probably change.
Yeah, definitely the same here. Yeah, I think that's all I got. I think we'll call it there. Flat 3 hours 15. Well, that's fine. All right. Thanks for watching. For those of you who did make it all the way here. So, all right, we're out.
All right.